The Cellcast is recorded in front of a live streaming audience.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Cellcast.
Shorts!
Joining me today is a man who, well, he just likes reliving his childhood. Welcome, Nate.
Oh, hi. Oh, wait, I'm not Jacob. What am I doing here? I'm sorry. Okay, I'm not going to get too crazy here.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nate Marchand. I am not MIFB Nate tonight because it would have just been a little too confusing. Plus, this isn't really kaiju related. And sometimes I like podcasting as myself, but not the caricatured persona
Right,
that I
right.
made for myself.
I'm sorry, I should have said you're supposed to now introduce me.
Oh, and sorry, I'm too used to being the guest and not the actual.
I'm not used to having to coach people.
And with me today is a man who doesn't give me all the instructions and brings me on at the last second. Welcome, Drew.
Oh, the fun of last minute topics. Yeah, tonight you'll note that Jacob is not here. He's had a long week with the family emergency he's had to deal with. So I gave him the night off and just asked Nate to come on, and I thought we'd do this little filler episode to go up in the meantime, where we're going to be talking about some of our favorite childhood cartoons.
Yes. Although I told you, we need to set some criteria here so I
Right.
know what I'm working with. So the way I interpreted it is that these are cartoons that we enjoyed watching as a child.
Yes.
And I interpreted that as age 10 and under.
Yeah, which I got to realizing after we were discussing that. I was like, okay, so if it was new at the time, it's only going to be like a 5-year period. Because I probably didn't remember any cartoons before I was 5. But that's still good. I got plenty of stuff to throw in there.
Well, and to be honest, I've kind of been tweaking the list a little bit, looking at it. Technically, actually, a lot of these that I'm including on here, I wasn't necessarily watching them on their first runs. I was still catching them on reruns, and one of them in particular, depending on how things go, how many we want to do, if we need to use backups and all of that. Technically, most of them were made before I was born. So,
well, admittedly, most of mine I can tell you range from like the late 80s to the mid 90s. So,
yeah, that's a good one. And because I'm going to tell you right now, if we had extended it out for I don't know, even into adolescence, this list would look different.
Yes, there would be a couple of similar ones just because, some of the originals are always going to be stick with you. But yeah, I can see one or two others being added if we got later on into the even if we just
were you
going
to say the 50s? That was weird.
I was going to say 15. Yeah. But I decided it's no, that's technically teenager. That's different. 12 is technically preteen. That's still considered quote unquote childhood.
And let's be honest, at least back when you and I were young, if you were a teenager and you were still watching cartoons, you felt a little embarrassed for some odd reason. It's that awkward time where you're I still like watching these things, but I do it in secret because I don't want anybody to know. It's kind of like one of my favorite C.S. Lewis quotations, which I usually have as the banner picture on my Facebook page, where he talks about, I'm paraphrasing here, he talks about how when I was young, I read fairy tales in secret because I didn't want anybody to know. Now that I'm an adult, I have put away I read them openly because I have put away childish things, such as the fear of being seen as childish and wanting to be very grown up. And I'm like, that's my life.
That's where I am now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing a podcast about cartoons, which most people just see all cartoons as childish, which I'm thinking, have you seen Perfect Blue?
I was going to say, I just heard the Perfect Blue episode.
Have you seen Ninja Scroll?
Is a real word.
Have you watched Akira?
I left you so many comments on that one. I'm like, psychopathy is a real word. And
which
comic book facts.
They're all in my notes for Thunderbirds.
I was going to say, at this point, if I'm the only guy who's going to hear the uncut episodes, you might as well get content out of me.
That makes sense. That makes sense. No, what I was going to say is like, that's where I am now with I don't care if people think what I'm watching is childish, but I can tell you about the time, while I never really stopped watching cartoons, because I mean, I was there when Pokemania started. I watched some of the first broadcast episodes in America of Pokemon back in the day. And so I was watching it because, I mean, even at the same time, that's when we finally got Cartoon Network, was around that time too, on my local cable package, which for those of you children out there who don't know what I mean by cable, who grew up on streaming, there used to be a time where, oh, wait a minute, streaming services now, as many as they are, as expensive as, are basically cable. You just you just didn't get to choose what we were watching back then.
Well, the thing that gets to me is I discovered that it, you know, with like the Zoomers and younger, they don't know a world without, well, for the most part, don't know a world without streaming.
Right.
What really gets to me is there were fellow millennials of ours who didn't realize TV could be free, because way too many of them grew up on cable and thought you had to pay to have TV. Didn't realize the local channels are free.
So, admittedly, I did not use the over-the-air broadcasts until I first moved into this apartment, just because we had cheap cable in town when I was, so I had 13 channels of cable, if you really want to call only 13 channels. I mean, I was able to watch Nickelodeon as a kid, but I didn't have that many. So, but still, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Because there were times where I felt weird when I told people, yeah, I didn't grow up with cable. Like it's suddenly I'm like the weirdo. I'm like, wait, there weren't a bunch of other people who didn't.
Now that being said, I did grow up with recording everything off VHS.
I did some of that too as well. Actually,
I recorded on that SLP mode so you could fit as much stuff in there, because who cares about quality as long as you got quantity.
Oh, EP mode. That was another name for it.
Well, EP
there was EP, LP, and SP.
You had SP, which was standard play, EP, which was extra play, which gave you like another 2 hours for lower quality. I always recorded on SLP, which was super long play, which gave you 6 hours, and it looked like it'd been fed through your cat and spit out in the litter box.
Okay, I guess it's just different terminologies then, because I saw SP, EP, and LP.
Well, LP and SLP probably are the same thing.
Yeah, I learned about this.
Sometimes it depends on your VHS, who made your blank VHS, which one it was called, or your VCR.
Yeah, it was that, and also, if you know, I was a physical media collector even as a child, and unfortunately, most things kaiju, particularly Godzilla, usually got relegated to EP recordings, so they looked like crap most of the time. And I remember distinctly when this is like the most kaiju thing we're going to get into right now with this. Okay, I remember there was a company called Scimitar that was one of the first companies to start releasing Godzilla movies stateside anyway on DVD, but they did at the time also produce VHS,
right?
Because DVD just hadn't caught on as much quite yet. I've heard a lot of people say that it was the PS2 that really made DVDs accessible to the vast majority of people, because DVD players were expensive.
The PS2, I think, was the first cheap quote unquote DVD player, or at least it was the first one that felt like you were getting a deal on, because you were also getting a video game console.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you had a family that wanted both, you had that. Of course, you started to kick the kid off when
Jacob's in the chat.
Hey, Jacob, how's it going?
Yeah, you're welcome, Jacob. I'm probably going to give you a call tomorrow sometime, because I hear you need art commission. So, I know I've got stuff we've talked about before, but anyway.
Yeah.
So I remember distinctly, I had all of these VHSs at one point, and I replaced them with their DVDs, and
like you do.
Whatever. Yeah, like you do. And sometimes I kind of regret parting with them, but anyway, they actually advertise.
I still have all my Star Trek VHSs. So
see, that's cool. But they actually advertise. This is one of the only times I've seen this done. Probably because they knew the audience that this is for is going to be looking for something like this. They actually advertise on the back cover, recorded in high quality SP mode. Because we're so tired of these cheap recordings that look like it was run through the dirt and then put onto the VHS, you know?
Yeah. I get it, because the things we lived through as children, and we didn't even realize how bad it was at the time, or I didn't. Wasn't until I first watched the DVD and go, oh, this can actually be crystal clear on my 19-inch CRT television that technically has stereo sound, not that anything around here broadcasted in it.
Yeah, and then sometimes you're like, that was not meant to be seen in high definition.
Oh, especially when you go and look back at it now and on your 1080p television. And it's like, oh, wow.
The most dangerous one is if you watch it on a 4K TV and you're just like, oh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
But anyway.
Yeah, but anyway. I mean, even, I'm going to tell you right now, even watching DVDs made in different eras.
Yeah, because
I notice it because I'm crazy and I'm that guy. I have 2 DVD editions of Ultra Mantiga.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a train.
Well, you know how it is.
Yeah.
I like trains.
Anyway,
I don't even know if they can hear that in the actual recording.
I barely heard it. Just so
they can
you
hear
know.
this, but I mean the train outside. I don't know if they can hear that on the podcast.
But whatever, I'm done swirling. But here's the thing: you might be wondering, why did you buy 2 copies? Well, it's because the Mill Creek DVD set was mucked around with because reasons a little bit beyond Super Raya's control. But regardless, I'm like, I want the unmessed with versions.
Fair.
So I tracked down the old DVD copies, some of which were a pain in the neck to do. And then when I watched the show, I just alternated between discs. Well, I found out that those old Funimation DVDs were still being produced when CRT TVs were more common.
Yeah.
Because they looked a little pixely.
They were still interlaced, I take it?
Probably, because like I said, they still looked a little pixely. But when I put in the Mill Creek, even though it's still DVD, with about the same number of episodes, I think, per disc, it looked smoother. So I'm like, I just can't win, can I?
It depends on how it was encoded and how they got the masters. If they were coming, if I would bet money that Funimation did not get the same masters that Mill Creek got. They probably got the 480 made for television masters.
I know they didn't, because the big differences that happened, and here's like a little bit of a a warning.
I figured it was our favorite person who messed up all the opening songs, and that's why you wanted both versions.
Johnny's?
I figured that's what it was.
It was Johnny's. The long and short of it, for those who don't know, Ultra Mantiga was incredibly popular, and certain Japanese talent agencies are absolute monsters and tyrants. And this one that was notorious was called Johnny's. Super Raya got 2 actors for this show from Johnny's. And the long and short of it is, one of them was the star of the show, and he was also in a band called V6, and they recorded the theme song. And the theme song is iconic. Look it up. Take Me Higher. Well, then, because of legal shenanigans from that talent agency, they basically barred Super Raya from rebroadcasting the show. So to get around it, Super Raya just said, screw it, and made a new theme song with another band.
Right.
So they could get around it and put it out there. And the goofy thing is, with the Mill Creek set, the Funimation set, it's the original theme song. And if it's used as an insert song during an episode, it's still there. So it's still there. That's why I wanted it, the unmessed with version, the original versions. But here's the thing that I think is kind of funny. 2 of the episodes on the Mill Creek set still have Take Me Higher, and I don't know why.
I ran into something similar to that with an anime, and I never figured out why. And I don't remember what anime it was, but like on the first episode, which had the same opening song as the rest of them, I found out, they had a different song there for the DVD, but then the rest of the DVD was the regular opening theme song. And I was like, why did y'all have to change this for the first episode? Was it because it was, from what I gathered, it was slightly different. So maybe it was a separate copyright and they just couldn't afford to get the copyright.
What I like to, I think,
or maybe it was in a different, maybe I think I remember now what it was. It was in English, ironically, but they could only license the Japanese version. So
okay. Well, here's what I think.
That happened with Battle of Gods on its first release too.
Oh yeah, I have a theory about what it is. I think the more likely explanation might just be that it was a simple oversight. You know, because it's only on 2 episodes. It's on the first disc, and they're back to back. It's like episodes 3 and 4. And I'm like, why? However, what I like to think is that
somebody snuck it in.
Is that Tsuburaya snuck it in just to stick it to Johnny's a little bit, and snuck in, you know, some masters of those episodes to Milk Creek's, you know, so they could kind of get it out.
And when you're going through those in a hurry, you can't catch everything.
Yeah, I was like, we did know. But then again,
it doesn't matter that you had to subtitle everything.
Yeah, but then again, what I also think what I also like to think of is there's an Ultraman movie. It's one of the best ones, actually. It's called Superior 8 Ultra Brothers, which is this big team up between several of the Showa Ultramen and several of the Heisei Ultramen, including Tiga, and they bring back the original actors, including the guy who played Tiga, and sometimes him appearing in stuff is a big sticking point with this talent agency
because they need to make their cut from every appearance.
Yeah, but Milk Creek was still able to get this movie, and as far as I could tell, no alterations have been made to it. So they released it. So what I like to think happened is Tsuburaya was, you know, having a meeting with Milk Creek, and they're like, hey.
Well, if it was a theatrical movie, they could have had more. They could have had more money on that release.
Maybe, but still, I just like to think that they came over to Milk Creek and say, hey, do you want Superior 8 Ultra Brothers? We want Superior 8 Ultra Brothers. Here it is. Don't tell Johnny's.
Or different contract may have been like, oh yeah, we get this and we don't have to pay you different for some reason.
I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't know.
But anyway,
it's just funny, but it may all end up being a moot point anyway, because now I've been noticing that Tiga, the show, has been showing up a lot more in some of the, like, Tsuburaya has its own streaming service over in Japan. It's showing up there now. Episodes that feature that actor in different shows is showing up on that service when it wasn't before. The Tiga movie, which got completely barred again because of stupid legal issues with Johnny's. Even though it's a fantastic movie, I have seen it. It's a fantastic movie. It's called The Final Odyssey. And, you know, so it's slowly starting to show up over in Japan. I think it's because Johnny's is basically dead now.
Yeah, that's what I'd heard. Because the guy who was running it, I think he got sick or passed away.
No, he got Me Too'd.
Oh, is that what it was? So yeah, he's not working there anymore, and now he's
Nope, and for what I've read, the company is not technically
trying to make money.
dead, but they've basically trying to, like, rebrand into something else, as if they're because they're like,
well, I mean,
none of that happened.
Some of the anime I've watched over the years, I know there was problems with Johnny's, and so you're not the first person I'd heard all this from. You just brought it back to memory after I remember reading about it years ago. So.
Yeah, it's because Johnny's was,
because they're
at least
pains
in the
neck.
90s, was run by tyrannical old men
who wanted their money,
didn't understand how things worked anymore, and they have refused to alter their policies even as things have continued to change since the 90s.
Right. It doesn't matter that the market's changed or it's the rest of the world doesn't follow the Japanese market,
or that TV is run differently now thanks to the advent of streaming and all kinds of international broadcasts and all kinds of.
But yeah, so many shows on streaming are still bound strangely to old archaic broadcast rules, from my understanding. That's why some stuff is still not streaming. It's not because they don't think they'll make any money if they put it on their services. It's because they literally can't get they can't. The rights are so wacky.
Oh, what are you talking about?
I don't remember the name of the show. I just know there's a couple out there. Because I remember reading this back when Batman 66 was still, you couldn't get it anywhere outside of the movie. Like, they made a documentary about
it was airing on TV some places,
right? Because of the
physical release.
the broadcast rights were or the syndication rights, I think, were handled one way, but there was, because of all the crazy stuff with Batman 66, they when they did it, even when they did a documentary about Burt Ward and brain is fried,
Adam West.
Adam West, they did one on them being in the show. All the clips, quote unquote, from the show were actually from Batman the movie, because that one they could legally get licensed. They couldn't license the show because of weird, stupid stuff that no one ever bothered to see if, we don't think this will make money. Why would anyone want to watch the 66 show? And come to find out, everyone wanted to watch the 66 show because the Blu-ray sold out pretty much when it came out. But anyway, besides the point. Cartoons from when we were kids. Back on topic.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go first. What's the first cartoon you want to talk about from when you were a kid?
Well, I don't know how you have these arranged, or I'm going to do.
I'm going in
three.
order. I want to make sure I talk about them.
Okay. And I'm assuming we're each going to do three, unless there are doubles, and then I have several backups. And I may mention the backups in passing
as well,
when we're done.
But who knows? We may not even have to hit those if we went completely different.
Well, like I said, I'll probably just mention them in passing.
Right.
And maybe we'll do a part 2 sometime and, expand on them a bit more.
It can always come back up.
So I am going in ascending order. So I'm going to start at the quote unquote bottom of the list and then go up. These are not in order of quality. Right. These are in order of how important they were to little Nate.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right. Interestingly, one of the ones on my prime list and one of the ones on my backup list, I've actually been revisiting recently. I've been going through them, or at least parts of them. But first one I'm going to mention, G.I. Joe.
The Real American Hero.
Specifically the Real American Hero edition. Now, the funny thing is, I remember
that's the G1 one, right? The original show from that was airing around the same time as the original
G1 is a Transformers term, but yes.
Well, I mean, Hasbro's used it for other things since.
Well, then. Yeah, but although Real American Hero, it's a little bit strange because there's 2 seasons than the movie. And that was made by Sunbow Entertainment.
Yeah, it's the same thing Transformers
Marvel
had.
Studios.
Yeah.
And then it went away for a while after G.I. Joe the movie was released on VHS because shenanigans with Transformers the movie. You guys have talked about that.
They had to change the ending of the G.I. Joe movie when they realized, maybe we don't need to kill the hero of the original show in the movie.
Which is interesting. So there was 2 seasons of that, then the movie. Then the show went away for a while. And then, of all people, Deke Entertainment decided to make 2 more seasons of it. And instead of doing like a weird reboot or something like that, they actually picked up where the movie left off.
Of course.
It's wild when I stop and think about it. Even as a kid, I'm like, we're picking up where the movie left off? Why does everything look different? Like, even when I was a kid, I'm like, why does everything look different?
It's almost like it's being drawn by an entirely different company.
Yeah, it's got a completely new theme song. And here's my first hot take for some people. Maybe, I don't know, because the Deke seasons are considered to be inferior to the original Sunbow seasons.
Right.
And from what I can remember, I haven't quite gotten to this. I haven't gotten to the Deeks show yet. It was released. Those 2 seasons were actually released separately from the other ones. And if you went and found like any of the collector edition, box sets or whatever, including like this crazy one that looks like an army chest that you can like pop open, and it's got all the DVDs for it. And then there's like a slot where you can stick in the movie when it came out and all that. It looks really fancy, and there's a box set that you can get. It doesn't have the Deke show, even though it's still technically part of the canon. It is still part of Real American Hero, but it is sold separately because it's not as well liked. However,
is it that, or could there be some other weird rights issue?
I don't think so, because it's still Hasbro putting it out. I think it's really just because those episodes are not as well liked.
It should be, because Hasbro any rights to that should revert to Hasbro by the end of the day. At the end of the day,
Hasbro still owns. They commission the show.
Yeah, so they should be the full owners of it.
That's not an issue. I think it's really just because those aren't nearly as popular.
Fair enough.
However, the Deke Show has the better theme song. There, I said it. I'm not kidding. Maybe it's a little bit because I remember when I was being babysat by the pastor's wife when both of my parents were working at the time. And I remember every day I was there, Carol was her name. She would tell me, hey, it's nap time. When you wake up, you can watch. I specifically remember her mentioning things like G.I. Joe and Transformers. And then so I would take a nap, wake up, boom, there's G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
And then as I got a little bit older, I would catch the reruns. And on the local stations, sometimes they would do weird things where it's the Sunbow episodes, but it has because the Deke Show was more current, they would have the Deke Show intro, and then then it would be the Sunbow episode. It was kind of weird.
Probably it was a repackage.
It definitely was.
So that's something that either Hasbro or whoever was the middleman there probably just re-edited. It's it's not a rerun technically, but
something like that. Now
the kids know it's a rerun.
Now I'm not going to say that the original G.I. Joe theme song isn't good. I do think it is. You know, because one of the things I think is kind of interesting about the G.I. Joe theme songs, the shows anyway, the movie is a whole other matter. Because like the opening sequence to G.I. Joe the movie is like a patriotic, forgive me for using this terminology because it's going to sound a little crass. It's like a patriotic wet dream. It's it's just crazy. I love that is the best intro to anything G.I. Joe ever of all time. No notes, no arguments to be taken. But it feels almost like recruitment videos. Like they play this to get people interested in enlisting in G.I. Joe. You know, because they have
if the U.S. Army wasn't somewhat funding this, they really were missing out on
they really were, because like you get the original and it's got this very kind of a little bit old timey kind of sound to it. It's like G.I. Joe, a real American hero. And then it goes into this whole thing. It explains the whole premise of the show to you in case you've never watched before. You know, it's like, you know, stopping Cobra, the enemy, you know, all this.
Yeah.
And then you get to the Deke Show and it's like full tilt rock and roll. Like the 90's just started and Extreme just started. Bam, we're going to get some of it in G.I. Joe right now. And it's like, I don't know. It's like soldier after some Red Bull. I mean, that's like, you know, basically. So that's kind of my nostalgic attachment to it. Watching it in the afternoon after being babysat. I also remember watching it in the morning on a local kids show where they would have these like little host segments. Because in my area, we had a local talent thing. You know how like the most famous example of this would be, was it Bozo the Clown from Chicago?
Yeah, on WG.
That's the one everybody knows. In my area in Fort Wayne, we had Happy the Hobo. It was a clown character at a local TV station here, and he had a little puppet sidekick named Froggy. It was a frog. Well, Froggy had his own show in the morning where Happy had his show in the afternoon.
Right.
So you had Froggy's pad where he would play some shows and have these little funny host segments. And so I would wake up early in the morning and I would catch an episode of G.I. Joe on Froggy's pad. Fun stuff like that. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, I'll be impressed because there's very little preserved of either of these shows because they didn't keep the masters of them.
Yeah, and admittedly, I don't think they ever did anything like that around here because the only memory I ever have of something like that was Bozo, and I didn't watch Bozo. So
yeah. So anyway,
I had enough other stations to keep me entertained.
Yeah. So I remember watching that a lot, and so that was a big one for me. I wasn't as big of a fan of the toys, admittedly, even though that was one of the big impetuses of the show. I only
it's the entire reason Hasbro was even wanting it.
Yeah, but which is funny. I just liked the characters and all that, but I wasn't like clamoring to get all of the toys or anything. I had some growing up, but it wasn't like my number one thing at that time, which could be said about some of these other cartoons that I watch. This guy's just like, I just like the characters.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to go have all the toys. Now there were some shows where I'm like, I do want the toys, and those were big investments for me. But for the most part, I'm just like, I just really resonate with these characters. I came from a military family.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's name is Joseph, so I was like, my dad is the real G.I. Joe.
Right.
You know, so there was some resonance, I think, there as well with it, and it's just revisiting it now, it's just crazy how wild the show was willing to get, how very fantastically science fiction it gets. It's still very pulpy, but it's clearly was made by people who understood what military life was like, as fantastical as the show was.
Yeah.
And I think that might be part of the appeal and why it ended up working as well as it did, because the relationships between the Joe characters in particular felt authentic. Like it was written from a place of actual knowledge. And also I was surprised to see just how they were willing to kind of push the envelope a little bit on the show compared to, I think, a lot of other 80s shows in particular. But that was, interesting thing about 80s cartoons is how they were willing to do that. And I've often joked, it's like, it's shows like this are why 80s kids were a little tougher than most.
Right. Well,
So,
I mean, it shows like that caused the censors to have to perk their ears up come 90s. But even then, they waited until the mid 90s.
Yeah. Now, currently in my rewatch, I broke it up. I had several of the DVD sets. I burned through them like several years ago. And then I'm like, you know what? I never finished buying all these, so I went and got the complete box set. And I was like, where did I leave off? Found out where I left off and kept going. I'm in the middle of, well, not actually at the middle, I'm kind of toward the end of season 2. And season 2 starts off really strong, but it's kind of like another show I'm going to talk about on this list. The first season is clearly where all the really iconic characters are. Yeah. And you get to season 2 where they're like, we need to introduce the new line of toys. So the characters from season 1 don't get as much airtime. And these season 2 characters, most of them are not nearly as beloved or as memorable. Right. To be honest, the only character from season 2 that I've seen so far where I'm like, yeah, that people know about this character, at least on the Joe side. And the only reason people even know who he was is because he's technically a real person who existed before this, so he's known for other things, and that's Sergeant Slaughter. Right. Who was a WWE wrestler who actually had to leave the WWE or WWF at the time so he could be on the show. Like, that's how dedicated he was to being on the show. They told him, if you want to be on G.I. Joe, you can't wrestle. It's like, fine, while I'm on the show, I'm not wrestling. So he went away for a couple of years to be on G.I.
It's amazing they let him still use his IP, because I know WWF owns a lot of the wrestlers' IP.
They do, and he is basically playing the wrestler character on the show.
Makes you wonder how he got away with that.
I don't know. Although I will say, he says a line in one of his early episodes where I'm like, they don't make cartoons like they used to, because he's basically supposed to be like the G.I. Joe drill sergeant. Like, they even say, like, the place where the G.I. Joes get trained is called the slaughterhouse. Right. So there's a point where they are doing horribly, like all these characters are doing horribly against the machinations of Cobra as like this big 5-part episode to open season 2. And they're like, we're failing miserably. So he comes in, he's like, I'm going to whip you all into shape. And I might be paraphrasing slightly with this, but I'm like, yeah, man, they don't make cartoons like they used to. Because that's one of the things I love about G.I. Joe is how unabashedly patriotic it is. Yeah. And this was one of those instances where he tells them, give your hearts to America, boys, because your butts are mine. And he's even yelling this at one of the generals in G.I. Joe. General Hawk was a new character that they introduced in season 2. He's even yelling this at that guy, and he's listening. I'm like, I'm sold.
There you go.
Unfortunately, Sergeant Slaughter hasn't showed up much since then.
Probably because of the WWE.
Maybe. And most of these other new characters, some of them have been kind of interesting, but I just haven't liked them as much. Like there's one they introduced, he was Lifeline. I'm like, I don't remember this guy. His name was Lifeline. He's a medic and he's a pacifist, so he won't pick up a gun. He abhors violence, and I'm like, why are you in the military?
Well, I mean, there are reasons. It's just that's why he's a medic and not, working on the front lines.
I know, it's just kind of weird because he keeps getting into situations like that.
Plus, isn't there a story of a real soldier who was like that, who worked on
Hacksaw Ridge? But
Hacksaw Ridge,
he wasn't a medic though. He was just a conscientious objector.
I see. I couldn't remember. I never saw the movie, and that's how I even know about it. I haven't seen the movie
either. I do want to. My brother has it. I've been meaning to watch it. There was also Sergeant York in World War I, who was a pacifist. He was a Christian as well.
Right.
I think the guy in Hacksaw Ridge was as well. But
that's what I remembered anyway.
Sergeant York got he's like, he kept trying to avoid going into the war, but then he got drafted, and then he was a hunter, and he had a dead eye. He could hit anything. So he ended up becoming a sniper, a military sniper, and he was revered as a hero because he ended up saving he ended up saving basically his entire platoon, if I remember, because there's a movie based on his life. It was made back in the 40s, I think. And he ended up saving his entire platoon by taking out 30 Germans. Because he was fighting in the European theater in World War I. He took out 30 Germans by jumping from one foxhole to the next and then popping them with his sniper rifle. And people asked him, was like, you're a pacifist. How can you justify doing that? And he's like, because I had to save them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. I'm done.
So the first one I'm going to bring up, I'm going to give you a little bit of history on it, at least a little of my history on it. And yeah, I am going kind of in the order of, I want to make sure I cover this before it gets grabbed, basically. But when I was growing up, just when I was still in kindergarten, give you an idea how long ago this was. I had gotten in the habit of, when I got home from school, I'd watch the Disney Afternoon programming block. So, Gummy Bears, DuckTales, Tailspin, Rescue Rangers. These were the shows many of the shows I grew up with. And the fact that I'm mentioning them here tells you none of these are showing up on my list. I'll go ahead and tell you that right now.
Which is saying something,
right?
Because DuckTales was a big deal.
Well, yes,
I did watch that one a lot.
But I will admit to you on DuckTales, while I know I watched the show, I remember only really two things: the theme song and the character from that ended up in the show I'm about to talk about.
Oh, I know where you're going.
So, and I remember
the pseudo spinoff.
I remember coming home from school one day, and I turned on the television, and they were showing DuckTales. At the time, Gummy Bears was supposed to be on, and I remember being disappointed because my cheese had been moved. Pardon the thing.
Well,
and I didn't know. I did not understand the idea of reprogramming. That they would change the programming from time to time.
The Disney Afternoon, at least in my area, the way they did the lineup it seemed kind of odd to me at first as a kid, and then I figured out their system. It just seemed like it was a 2-hour block in my area.
Same here.
And then they would run the show. They would run all the shows for a year or whatever. Then they would add a new show, and they would just push everything else back a half an hour, and the first show would just get cut off and disappear.
And that's what had happened here. So I'm watching DuckTales, disappointed that Gummy Bears wasn't showing, because I liked the show Gummy Bears, and I haven't seen it since then, but at the time I remember liking it. I watched DuckTales was half an hour early, Tailspin was half an hour early, Rescue Rangers was half an hour early, and I don't know if that was the exact order at the time. All I know is 4:30 rolled around and Darkwing Duck came on. And I kind of fell in love with it. In fact, he's the only toys I have left from my childhood. And there's not, or outside of the Star Trek ones. I'm trying to get his hat to pop up, but it's not going right now. Anyway, there we go.
There you go.
these are the only, like, I didn't get many licensed toys when I was a kid. And so the fact that I have a collection of these things that I still have tells you how much I loved this show as a kid. And I have gone back and watched it on DVD, I think, since then. I need to go back and watch some more of it because it was just such a classic. I mean, obviously, it's riffing on Batman the Animated Series. Is obviously what it's supposed to be riffing on. But
Jim Cummings,
yeah, you got Jim,
probably his most famous role.
Yeah, in fact, when they did the reboot of DuckTales and they brought Darkwing Duck back, they just got Jim Cummings to replay his role.
Because his voice still sounds the same.
It's the same. It's the same voice. And Jim Cummings is a master with voice acting. He's like Jim Cummings was one of those names that he didn't pop up in the same talks that like Frank Welker or Mel Blanc or any of those kind of people came up with, but he should have. But most people don't know who Jim Cummings is. And yet he's in like he's on like almost more stuff than Frank Welker is.
Between Frank Welker and Jim Cummings, that's basically our entire childhood.
Well, bear in mind, you know The Lion King.
Yeah. You
know the song "Be Prepared," that's sung by Jeremy Irons as Scar
for like
three quarters of it. and because he blew out his voice in the middle of that song, Jim Cummings had to take over. And until you know that, you can't tell that's what happens in that movie. But yeah, Darkwing Duck, I loved that show as a kid. It was so much fun. And yeah, it did bring back Launchpad to fly Darkwing's plane.
That's why I think of it as a pseudo spinoff, even though I think it's officially not.
It is still a pseudo spinoff because Gizmo Duck, I think, is in an episode also.
He is. Yeah.
So they're connected. It's just they've always been kind of there's a wall. We'll call it whatever that river is that goes around. I'm now losing points because I can't remember the name of Darkwing Duck City.
It's not Duckburg.
No, it's not Duckburg. I want to say Duckburg, but it's not Duckburg. It's something else. It something Gotham Knight-ish. Gotham Knight-ish.
I'll look it up.
Right. And it has been a bit, but I love Darkwing Duck as a kid. There was an episode I remember loving, and it was basically, this is still a superhero show, but there's one episode, because it's still more of a comedy than anything else. There's an episode where Darkwing Duck is trying to read a comic book and write a comic book and everyone else is interrupting him. And I'm thinking, this is a goofy idea for an episode where I'm wanting to
actually see. On here on Wikipedia, it says, though it was originally thought by some fans to be a spin-off of DuckTales, creator Tad Stone stated in a 2016 report that the two shows exist in different universes. Despite this, supporting characters Launchpad McQuack, Gizmo Duck appear in both series in similar roles, and Scrooge McDuck is mentioned in the Darkwing Duck episode Tiff of the Titans.
So yeah, it may officially be separate universes. I consider it the same universe. It was just such a fun classic show.
Yeah. Drake Mallard is a parody of Kent Allard, which is the alter ego of the Shadow.
That makes sense. I'd forgotten. It makes sense that there's a Shadow, especially since you got the gas gun as his main weapon.
Saint Canard.
That makes sense. That does kind of have that Gotham City feel to the name, and it's obviously, like I said, it was just like the quintessential superhero show as a kid. Even though I was also watching Batman the Animated Series and X-Men and all that other kind of stuff, but this was the one that got me really interested in that sort of stuff. Yeah,
Wikipedia says that it's largely inspired by the Shadow, the Sandman, which is a pulp hero, Doc Savage, Batman, obviously, the Green Hornet, and what is it, Julius Caesar's? Oh, and by the original Flash. The original Barry Allen run on the Flash,
the '60s era Flash,
and it also says the Lone Ranger and Zorro.
Well, yeah, but Batman
Canard
pulls
is
from
the
that
French
too.
word for duck, by the way.
Yes, because puns, because that's how all the duck shows go. But yeah, I remember loving the show as a kid because most of my knowledge of DuckTales comes from like the movie Treasure of the Lost Lamp, and then which is already dark compared to the rest of that show. But then you get Darkwing Duck, and it's like at just the right age, because this would have been right before Power Rangers started. I think it's like within a year or two of that. And I was just right at that age where it's like, this is my show. This is the one I'm gonna have all the toys for, and I'll get for Christmas. And I just loved that show as a kid. So yeah, and it's good classic Disney animation, even though I'm fairly certain it was Korean animation, if we're gonna get right down to it.
I'm looking at this character list. They actually had a Justice League sort of.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Justice Ducks. The Justice Ducks is something
Ducks,
else.
which had Gizmo Duck, Morgana Macabre.
Yes, because that was Darkwing Duck's unrequested girlfriend. They were boyfriend girlfriend, but Darkwing really didn't want her as a
and then
as a love interest. But
Neptunia and Stegmut.
Basically the only quote unquote heroes that were in that show also.
I forgot they had a parody of Shield on this show. Shush.
And they fought such great heroes as great villains.
I was going to say my next question is going to be, who are your favorite villains?
Well, Negaduck kind of always takes the cake because he's evil Darkwing. But I remember. Oh man, I should have had this list in front of me so I don't look so stupid. Because I remember that there was a water dog character that I always thought was funny as a villain.
Liquidator?
The Liquidator, yeah. And then
I'm looking at the villain list right now.
Metal Beak was another good one.
Metal Beak, which is Black Mask, basically.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm bringing this up. So, Megavolt was good.
Megavolt.
And Bushroot. Bushroot, I think, was my favorite idea.
Dr. Reginald
Bushroot. But everyone just called him Bushroot. And I think Magica De Spell did show up in an episode from DuckTales. So, yeah. I mean, it's just it was a fun show and great superhero comedy. So,
yeah, because the shtick of the show was Darkwing Duck always introduced himself differently. He always had to do a dramatic
terror
entrance.
that flaps in the night.
Yeah,
I am the comic book that somebody creased with their hot dog or something.
Yeah.
I am Darkwing Duck.
The opening line is always the same, but then after that, he's always got some different and goofy.
And this is one of the few times I've gone back and bought comic books after the fact, especially the Boom Studios run before Disney bought Marvel. And there is an episode. There's a series in there that they did called "Crisis on Infinite Darkwings," and literally he's dealing with Darkwing Ducks from other universes, and they're all plays on like different ones. There was a Sailor Moon Darkwing in one shot. There was all these different ones.
Well, I don't know.
It was a visual.
Whether or not that was like a female Darkwing as a sailor shout.
It's hard to tell. Literally, it looked like Darkwing Duck in Sailor Moon cosplay. It's kind of what it looked like. But it was in one of these where it was just showing multiple different panels, and so it's obviously just a quick aside joke. It's like,
it's a little
here's
bit
all
like,
the weird different little Darkwing Ducks.
It's a little bit like Into the Spider-Verse.
It was very much riffing on more on Spider-Verse than it was Crisis on Infinite Earths, but those were some of my favorites. That was my favorite cartoon as a kid. And no other cartoon I think actually lived up to it. Now, I know when I've gone back and watched it since then, didn't quite live up to my memories, but it's still a good show.
Well, like I said, for me, these are not in order of quality. These are in order of how important were they to little Nate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what's your second one?
Now, in retrospect, I think this particular one has kind of gotten more important to me than the number one that I'll be talking about here. Mostly because this is part of a franchise that's had more staying power, I think, compared to a lot of the other ones. G.I. Joe's had a lot of ups and downs, obviously. This one technically has too, but it's just been more consistent. But the first iteration of it, you know what? It may not be my favorite iteration of it, that would probably have to go to a show that if we were going beyond age 10, I would be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just one of the things you never forget your first. Transformers.
Right. I figured. After you talked about G.I. Joe, I figured, okay, Transformers is going to have to show up on this list.
Transformers is very closely tied. They were produced at about the same time. G.I. Joe was technically first. Not by a lot, but it was technically first because they did 2 miniseries, I think, before Transformers actually started. And Transformers actually first came onto the scene in terms of adaptations, actually as a comic book before the animated series. And the comic book is similar, but also really different from the show. Same with the G.I. Joe comics that were produced by Marvel at the time. They went in some very wildly different directions. Most notably, like the origin of Cobra Commander is very different in the comics than he is in the show. There's the origin in the show / movies kind of goofy, but
as it usually is.
Even though I would argue that his origin in the comic is a little goofy too, just a different kind of goofy. But anyway, Transformers. That was a big deal to me. That was the one where I'm like, yeah, I want to get the toys. Like I was picking up the toys as much as I could. And I missed out on the movie. I missed out on the movie actually for a long time. I remember hearing about the movie.
Yeah.
But I never actually saw it until I think I might have actually, at least in its entirety. I remember seeing it sitting on a video shelf, but thinking that it was probably just I thought it was, I had no idea it was actually original. I thought it was a compilation movie. So I never bothered with it.
See those all the time.
Yeah, because I never bothered with it. But I saw the G.I. Joe movie, quote unquote, because it was when it was split up into 5 parts and then aired for an entire week. Right. And it had all these bookend segments with Sergeant Slaughter who would introduce it. You know, and everything. Then do a preview. It's like, this is what's going to happen in part 2. They never did that for Transformers the movie, probably because that would require a lot of censorship. I'm amazed they did that for the G.I. Joe movie, because the G.I. Joe movie was like, yeah, we're a movie and we're gonna be a hard PG, okay? Yeah. You know, we're actually gonna have even more horrific imagery, because actually G.I. Joe gets a little horrific at points. We're gonna have even more horrific imagery, and people are actually gonna die. So, but
except for the main dude, he just went into a coma and is better by the end of the film.
Yeah. But anyway, so I missed out on the movie until I was basically an adult. You know, so I was probably like in college when I finally saw it. And then I understood why. First off, like all the stuff I heard about is like, oh yeah, Optimus Prime dies in the movie. It's like, he dies in the movie? What?
And, and you're expecting that to be like at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
it's like in the first half hour.
I was like, what the frick? And that's when I discovered the joys of Transformers the movie. And I never...
That movie's fun for other reasons.
Yeah. But the crazy thing was, I realized later, most of my memories, my childhood memories with Transformers the show, were the first 2 seasons. Right. I did not remember anything from season 3 and beyond. Well, really, it's the movie and because I didn't see the movie, but it's season 3 and beyond. I didn't remember any of it. I caught not even a whole episode. I caught part of an episode of season 3 on, of all things, the Sci-Fi Channel, because they reran it on Sci-Fi Channel, because at one point, Sci-Fi Channel actually had a block of kids cartoons that they would air in the morning. And Transformers, the original G1 Transformers, was one of them. And I caught part of a season 3 episode. What I found out later was a season 3 episode. And boy, was I confused, because I'm like, what the frick is going on? The only character I recognize is Grimlock. What happened after I stopped watching as a child? What happened?
It went off the rails, from my understanding.
Yeah, it did, in a lot of ways. Some things were really cool. Other things are like,
it's almost like Hasbro was trying to make that show as cheaply as possible.
Yeah,
especially after the movie bombed.
Yeah, I mean, there were some really good stories.
Oh yeah,
the animation was just W.T. Henshin there at points.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what the heck? So, you know, I didn't get to watch the entire thing. until it was released on DVD. And I went through the whole thing and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then I got to season 3 and I'm like, I got nothing. You know, this was stuff that I heard about as Transformers lore, some of which I have, like Beast Wars, which if you're going to twist my arm and ask me, tell me, you know, what's my favorite iteration of Beast Wars, of Transformers, it would be Beast Wars.
Fair.
As much as I absolutely adore the characters and the cast from the original, it's Frank Welker at his best. It's Peter Cullen giving
There's
his
a
most
reason they got Peter
performance.
Cullen back to play Optimus Prime.
Yeah,
in the Bay films.
Yeah, it's Peter Cullen at his most iconic. All of that. Beast Wars is still a better show. I hate to admit it, but it's a better show. You know, but that's neither here nor there with this discussion. So I really fell in love with Transformers as a concept. Even as a kid, I loved the high level of sci-fi and the world building, and just the concept is I've noted several times the most brilliant thing about the concept of Transformers. It's like the perfect thing for boys, because a Transformer, if you get a boy a Transformers toy, it's got 3 things boys like.
Yeah.
It is a robot, it is a car, and it's a puzzle.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get my first Transformer toy until Beast Wars was out. In fact, it was when Metallics, that part of Beast Wars started.
Transmetals,
sorry. And I had one that was one of
Beetleborgs was Metallics. Sir.
My apologies. This was all around the same time.
I know. It was
and they all kind of
mean
mean the same thing. We're making the toys out of shiny, cheap-looking plastic metal. That's what it means. But I had one that was the tarantula that would turn into the motorcycle. Tarantulas, yes.
I actually got to meet that voice actor last year at a con.
And I think my parents thought I was nuts for wanting this and not like the gorilla or the rhino. It's like, no, I want this thing because it looks cool. I don't even know if my parents knew I'd bought a bad guy.
See, I would be one of those parents who's actually paying attention. It's like, okay, what's the lore this?
I'm not saying my parents didn't pay attention. It's just like, this was at the era where I was watching Power Rangers. Or I think it was Beetleborgs even too. And so my parents they knew I was watching actiony stuff and it was clean. But that's about all they really were paying attention to.
Right. So, you know, most of the toys that I had growing up were the quote unquote Generation 2 models, which that was another weird thing that they did. So they made this new line of toys, Generation 2, which was mostly, there were some new ones in there, but a lot of them were reissues of the G1 toys with some, you know, I guess some mild improvements. Right. I still remember being 10 years old and getting Optimus Prime, the G2 Optimus Prime, and just cherishing that thing. I still have it. It's a little beat up, a little more beat up than I would like, but I still have it. And I'm going to hold on to that thing forever, probably, if I can. And, you know, that just opened the floodgate, and I started getting more of these things. And I remember that they did a show tie-in with it, but it was just episodes of the G1 show with these weird CGI enhancements, not to the show itself, but they changed the transitions to these weird CGI things.
Right.
It's supposed to be like this thing, like this cube in outer space that's showing you all this stuff. And you know how on the original version of the show, when they're switching between good guys and bad guys, do and then you'll have the insignias come up and flip. They did that, but they edited out the original 2D animated version and put in this spinning 3D space cube, and it would just have the Decepticon or Autobot insignia on it. And when it would switch, it would just there would be these doors that would kind of come in and close the scene. And it would be like Autobot logo. Then it would back up. It would spin around. And then it would come back and the Decepticon logo would come up. And then the door would open, like this door thing would open up again. And it would show you the next scene. It was weird and it was cheap and it was easy to do. They made a new intro that was 3D CGI that looked
they could keep the
very
show
early 90s.
They could keep the show on the air and technically call them new episodes, even though they aren't.
Yeah. And then they made a whole new intro that was very early 3D CGI from the 90s. But it was
Mainframe
Optimus
probably
fighting.
was a talk. They probably said, let's do like that reboot show.
Yeah, but the weird thing was, it was Optimus fighting Starscream.
Of all people.
Yeah, look up that intro sometime on YouTube. It is really strange that they went with that and not Megatron. I guess it's because Megatron is just a gun. So what are they gonna do?
That's
and
always
Starscream
that is always the problem, because somebody else always has to shoot Megatron when he transforms. So
yeah,
and a lot of times it's Starscream.
Yeah, I don't know. But that was like a weird collection of season 1 or 2 episodes where they would just kind of cherry pick ones,
right,
and then they would do all these things to it, and they would air it at 6:30 on Saturday mornings in syndication before all the network shows got started.
Right,
when Saturday morning cartoons were a thing, and yeah, so that was my experience with Transformers. Like I said, it became a big part of my life. Because when Beast Wars came out, I was following that. I kept following it when Beast Machines was on. I sort of tried to follow some of the weirdo anime shows that came out in the early 2000s, but I couldn't quite keep up with them. And I didn't find them as appealing.
A lot of them were on Cartoon Network, and they were not as good.
Yeah.
From what I remember. It was around the same time you get stuff like X-Men and the Wolverine, which is not a bad show. It's just different. And a couple others. It's like, or X-Men Evolution's another example.
Yeah.
Where it's like, these aren't bad shows, but they're weird and they don't quite grab me.
Yeah. Now, I will admit, a lot of the Transformer shows that have come out since that's the thing.
There's so many
Hasbro
shows.
was trying to milk Transformers really hard. It seemed like there was a new Transformers show almost every year for a while there.
Yeah.
They didn't do that as much with G.I. Joe, which is a little surprising. I have theories about that, but I don't want to get you canceled, so I won't go into it too much, even though I've seen some newer G.I. Joe stuff where I'm like, that's actually really good. Why didn't you do that for the live action movie? Because I have opinions about the live action movies.
I've heard the live action movies are, I'll just say this, they are better than the Bayformers films, but that's really debating how good you think the Bayformers films are. That doesn't mean they're good. That just means they're slightly better.
I might be willing to argue that was it Rise of Cobra, I think is what it's called. It might be worse than all the Bayformer movies. Well, most of the Bayformer movies, because it doesn't feel like it actually respects G.I. Joe,
which is like most of the problems from the nostalgia films from that era. It's like, we're doing this because we know the name has money. We don't know if we actually care to actually follow anything.
I mean, I'm not opposed to making some changes,
right?
Because I would expect that, but I'm like, it's got to be in the spirit, the core of it.
You got to be in the spirit of the original, and a lot of times these shows aren't in the spirit of it.
Yeah, and it actually would have been worse if not for Ray Park saying "screw you, no," because they were going to make Snake Eyes talk.
Yeah, Snake Eyes should
in the movie, but Snake Eyes said, "No, he doesn't talk. I'm not talking." Like, he put his foot down and said, "I'm not talking. This is not the character." And he got his way. He didn't talk. Good. So anyway, yeah, like everything else that since then, it's debatable if any of it is good or not. I will admit there is one other Transformer show that is high on my list. I've seen some of it and I want to finish it. And that is, what is it called? Transformers Prime. That's the one that I really would like to finish because I hear a lot of good stuff about that one. And that one seems very much in the spirit of the original G1 cartoon and perhaps even Beast Wars. Beast Machines is weird. That's a whole other matter. But so anyway, Transformers next on my list. What's yours?
Well, we were bringing up Saturday morning cartoons a minute ago. And I am staying down on that same list of Saturday morning cartoons with one that came out in 1993. Both me and you lived through the great video game console war of 1992, 93. Oh,
I know where this one's going.
Right? And I'm sure, and there was people drawing, the marketing for both these companies was very good because you were either on Nintendo's side or you were on Sega's side. I was on Sega's side because I'm sorry, the Blue Hedgehog was cooler to me than the Plumber. Forgive me. Obviously Mario won, but I was a Sega kid, and so yeah, no one here is surprised that one of my favorite cartoons as a kid was what we collectively now call Sonic Sat AM, because that's because there were actually 2 Sonic the Hedgehog shows that came out the same time.
And I watched both of them.
I watched both, and in many ways in my mind they're the same show, but they're entirely different. But basically,
they are very different.
Basically,
sir.
on Monday through Friday, you would have The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and it was this goofy comedy thing. And then on Saturday mornings, you'd have this dark, deep freedom fighter story fighting against the evils of Dr. Julian Robotnik. I love the fact that it's Julian.
Admittedly takes a lot of liberties from the games.
It does,
If you want to get
here's the thing.
If you want to get pedantic, Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog is arguably closer to the games.
It is arguably closer, but Sonic Sat AM is closer to what Sega of America believed should have been the story, because first off, if you want some good reading material about that console war, go read the book Console Wars by, I had to look up the name, but it really tells you a lot about that era and how Sega of Japan was trying to make what they considered a friendly, safe kids property. And the guy running Sega of America, who is the one who made Barbie popular again, he said, no, we got to do this like Ninja Turtles. And came up with this whole thing, and then got Sega of Japan to make changes specifically for the American market. That stayed that way in Japan too. Granted, now we still are stuck with Dr. Eggman because that's what they wanted to call him in Japan, which is still a stupid name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's always going to be a Robotnik.
To me, he is always Robotnik, and that will be the hill I die on. You can call, there's only one version of that character I will call Dr. Eggman, and that's the version in Sonic Boom, because he is that stupid.
Yeah.
But that's a comedy show. It's supposed to be.
I'm sorry, but if they think Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog is anywhere close to Ninja Turtles, no. That's one of the other shows I've been rewatching recently. The original, I forgot.
They weren't thinking Adventures of Sonic.
The Ninja Turtles show was at balancing action and comedy.
What happened was ABC wanted a comedy show, and Sega did not want a comedy show. Sega of America didn't want a comedy show, so they decided just to make 2 shows. So while the official thing they were putting in the manuals for the Sonic the Hedgehog were this more heavy action comedy thing, and that's what they ended up doing the Archie comics off of, which, let's not get into Archie comics drama with Ken Penders. That's just we're going to be here a while. But and all that, the reason half these characters don't exist anymore is because of that nonsense. But The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog was just meant to be this goofy show that they actually wanted to sell. And then they go and use the same voice actors for both shows. So you've got
Jaleel White.
Sonic
in both shows.
Is the voice of Sonic is to me still the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog in my head. I'm sorry to every other actor who has ever played him. Y'all all do excellent jobs. I've yet to hear a Sonic the Hedgehog performance that is bad, save Sonic Schoolhouse. Because that's disturbing. But I'm sorry, Jaleel White is still my Sonic the Hedgehog, and Jim Cummings is my Dr. Robotnik.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was.
And he had this.
Was he Robotnik in both?
He was Robotnik in both, from what I can tell. And his name was not.
Credit to those voice actors that they could do 2 very different shows as the same character
and the recording
at the same time, the same characters.
Yes.
Because Robotnik in Sat AM is scary.
He is very scary. And the show was just so good. And I read the comics at this time, which the Archie comics is weird. I'm just going to say it. The Archie comics are weird. They're kind of a fun kind of weird, but they are weird. And it's because Ken Penders, who was writing all those at the time, he could do whatever the crap he wanted and no one cared. And then crap happened, and we're not going to get into that right now.
Yeah,
there's plenty of YouTube videos you can go watch to find out what went on with Ken Penders and why Archie Comics no longer has the comics license for Sonic the Hedgehog. It's a whole thing.
But man,
and unfortunately, all these characters from Sad AM are mixed in with that because they were all made around the same time, and the comics did more with defining those characters than the shows did, and we'll never see Sally Acorn or Bunny Rabbit or any of those other great characters. Antoine Ant Depardieu, a French fox, a male French fox who has a Napoleon complex.
Yes. I was a Nintendo kid growing up, but I enjoyed watching the shows, and I had played some Sonic the Hedgehog games. I was familiar with the character,
right?
You know, and so I knew what was going to, and I just enjoy watching the shows. I watched the Mario stuff
at the same time.
Well, yeah, but one of the great tragedies that you definitely need to mention is that Sad AM, as good as it was, as bold as it was, it was really bleak at points. Like, it was very dystopian, apocalyptic, and, you know, and a little bit horrifying, because one of the concepts that they introduced is they call it roboticization.
And Bunny Rabbit is half robot, half bunny, because they saved her at the last minute, but they already got started on the process.
Yeah, basically,
and Sonic's uncle is fully roboticized.
Yes, he's got a little bit of a Peter Parker thing going on.
Very much.
There. Yeah. So it's actually kind of horrifying. The idea is that you get captured by Robotnik, forced to go into these booths, and then he just forcibly transforms you into a machine.
Admittedly, that was the best.
Is such a horror. Even as a kid, I'm like, that is a horrifying concept.
And admittedly, all of the original games you look at, it's like, no, the animals are placed in there to act like batteries, like the Matrix for these robots. They're not being turned into them.
That's actually just as horrifying.
It's just as horrifying. It's just as dark, but it's not like your will is being taken from you. You're just trapped in this robot body.
Yeah, it's just a horrifying concept. But the great tragedy, ends on a cliffhanger.
I know. And you know that what's worse, there's technically a sequel called Sonic Underground that only went one season. That does not start with finishing up that
wait, that's considered a sequel?
It is a sequel. It takes place like sometime after. But because there's a bit of a time gap. And I think that it's a pseudo sequel more than anything else. But
it's got to be more of a pseudo sequel, because I've seen a little bit of Sonic Underground. It's weird, and I'm like, this wants to kind of be Sad AM, but it's not Sad AM.
But here's the thing: it also does not end with the whole thing of Sonic Underground is they're trying to find their mom. They never find their mom, even though she's right over there. The whole time, but she's like, I can't get into their lives too early because then it will screw something up mystical. And it's like, they're right there. They're playing in a rock band. Go talk to them.
Yeah,
I know you're the queen, and they are somehow the royal children, and that doesn't quite fit up with Sonic Sad AM either.
None of it. I'm sorry,
it's a pseudo sequel more than anything else. But the way I always. It felt like it was a sequel, even though it really wasn't a sequel, because not even any of the Freedom Fighters show up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because the creator,
Princess Sally's not even involved. Yeah, so that would be really awkward.
Of Sad AM had an entire third season planned.
Yeah, and they canceled it because the ratings were bad.
I think I've heard him say that if someone came to him and said, "Let's make this happen," he would make it happen.
They honestly, they should make a third season as a streaming thing and just be done with it. They never will, because Sega hates these characters now, and they only want to support their current stuff, which I get. Don't get me wrong, but I would love if they could have finished that up.
Yeah, because the last episode
is a cliffhanger.
And the way it ends is it looks like Robotnik has been defeated,
but
But then you find out, what is it, Mr. Snively? Or
Snively
like
was his
Snively,
little
sidekick.
His little sidekick that was obviously supposed to be the
sidekick.
He's supposed to be the comedic relief sidekick villain that you're not supposed to take seriously. All of a sudden, he might be the actual evil mastermind.
Yeah, because he escapes at the last second.
Yeah.
And after putting up with Robotnik for abusing him for 2 seasons,
and
then everything basically blows up from what I can remember. And then he pops out of his little hiding space, and suddenly he's talking like a real villain.
Yeah.
And then he says something about how, like, he has a new master or whatever, walks out of the way, and in this dark doorway that he walked out of, you hear a growl and glowing red eyes. And then the show ended.
Yeah. And we never got to see it again.
We never got to see it again. Now, the creator has talked about who that character was and what he was supposed to be in the 3rd season. But, yeah, it's all unrealized.
And 22 episodes. It's a very
26.
short show.
26.
I'm sorry, I was looking at runtime. But still, yeah, 26 episodes.
2 seasons, 13 episodes apiece.
It's crazy. That is so crazy that show is that short. And yet I remember thinking this thing was on for 5 years. And it was in reruns, but I remember it feeling like it was a lot bigger. Of course, I was also reading the comics at the same time, and they're a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
And to me, all
really
of this was, and to me at the time as a kid, all this was the same. So yeah, I'm playing the games and going, oh yeah, that's the roboticizer right there that we're freeing all the animals from. It's not what it's officially called, but whatever. Before they get turned into badniks.
It was a genuinely good show.
Oh,
as different as it was from it was a genuinely good show, a bold show.
It's a shame it never got to finish.
Well, you know why? ABC made the mistake of putting it in the absolute worst time slot on a Saturday morning.
Yeah. Wasn't it opposite Power Rangers?
Yep.
I know because
that juggernaut plowed that
because
show.
I had to choose as a kid. And granted, I was lucky I could watch, and what I chose was Sonic the Hedgehog because I watched Power Rangers during the week. Because the show that played, the episode that played on Saturday was a rerun, technically, of Power Rangers. But, oh man, that was such a good show.
That's what killed it. It was a casualty.
Too much
of
90s extremism.
It was a casualty of the Power Rangers juggernaut. You know, it just ended. That's just what ended up happening. It was true. It seemed like it was very true in the 90s. You would have these shows that would start off strong, would be kind of popular. Yeah. And then the thing in children's television would happen.
And they would die.
Everything would just die because of it. Because
Power nothing Rangers could compete.
Killed a lot of good animated series because that was such a juggernaut, it was such a phenomenon. Nothing could compete with it. Sonic the Hedgehog, Sat AM was
Power Rangers killed a lot of things. Digimon and Pokemon killed a lot of things.
Killed a lot of things.
And there's more you can put your fingers on. So this killed a lot of things because kids weren't watching them; they were watching the new hotness, the thing that was taking the world by storm. Yeah, I can't complain about the kids watching what they want to watch. At the same time, I can look back and go, man, I wish this show could have finished.
Yeah, it seemed like that was much more of a 90s thing. For what I've been able to gather,
90s was the end of 80s. 90s was the end of Saturday morning cartoons, and we by that point
not
had
entirely. Well, they lasted another decade.
I consider it the basic end of it. I mean, it still went on, but at the time we had 5 stations broadcast stations that played these things. You had ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and Kids WB. Yeah,
but here's the thing that gets to me,
and even that couldn't keep up with everything.
Yeah. When I think back on the 80s, I can tell you right now, in the 80s, because you can kind of I kind of like to split my childhood up into like different eras of what was the thing for children and most popular thing for kids at the time.
Yeah.
And the 80s had 2 But I don't think I ever heard anybody talk about how, oh, this show was so huge, it killed all these other things. Oh, that show was so huge, it killed all those other things. The early 80s, the thing was He-Man and Masters of the Universe. But I don't remember anyone saying like, oh, because He-Man was so popular, it killed this show. Because you still had Transformers and G.I. Joe. And, and then all these other shows that were doing perfectly fine. Maybe they weren't number
Teenage
one,
Mutant
but
Ninja
they
Turtles
were
in the late 80s. And that inspired a lot of things. But it didn't kill anything. Or at least no one talks about it. It's like it didn't kill anything beloved if it killed anything.
Yeah, that's what gets me. Because then Ninja Turtles showed up, usurped He-Man.
Which makes me wonder if
but then
in the
Power
80s,
Rangers shows up, usurps Ninja Turtles, and they start killing things. And then Pokemon killed things after they dethroned Power Rangers.
Well, and admittedly, so many of the other shows of the big properties then were starting to copy. How many shows did we of the late 90s cartoons that were part of major franchises all of a sudden turned into Pokemon clones? I mean, there was a Transformers show that came out around that time where they all had mini cons, and it was basically Pokemon
Armada,
but with Transformers.
That was Armada, Energon, and Cybertron,
something like that. Yeah, I'm going, really? This is what we're going with? It's Pokemon. If I want to watch Pokemon or Digimon, because I liked both shows, I will watch Pokemon or Digimon. You are Transformers. I want to see giant robots fighting each other.
And somewhere Jacob is getting triggered.
Because I mentioned Pokemon and Digimon in the same sentence.
Yes.
I know. He loves Digimon. I know he prefers Digimon to Pokemon.
Yeah, but the weird thing is with Ninja Turtles, it inspired clones, but they just latched onto the very basic concept and then just went completely different directions.
Right. It's like the show's
in
never...
the late 80s, early 90s, there were a bunch of anthropomorphic animal superhero things. Biker Mice from Mars. And
Biker Mice from Mars, I think, also came off of the Power Rangers thing, too.
A little bit, but it's clearly
all around that same time.
Battletoads.
Yes.
And, so it's the same very general concept, but then it goes in wild, completely different directions.
Yeah.
So it wasn't quite the same. I don't know.
In Jacob's honor, when we're talking about animal superhero characters, I will mention SWAT Cats. Even though I love the show, I don't remember watching it. It didn't make that big a splash. I just remember thinking, oh, look, super fun cats that fly jets. That sounds cool. When's Power Rangers coming on?
You want to know another one? This was actually an anime because the influence of Ninja Turtles got all the way to Japan.
I know which one you're about to say. Samurai Pizza Cats.
Which is getting a video game now with the same voice actors?
I know.
I thought the show had been lost.
No.
I swear I read something that said the show had been lost.
You can go on Amazon right now and watch it. Or
I know.
Crunchyroll. It's like you can go find it pretty much anywhere. And it is stupid. I will tell you this. It was a fun kind of stupid, but it's a stupid show.
Well, actually, what's weird about Samurai Pizza Cats was that it was a clone of both Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it's made by
Pizza Cats is their weird love child.
And it's made by Tatsunoko, who made all the classic 70s and 80s anime. And it's this weird thing that takes place right here. And what's even more fun is that when they made the show here, when they translated the show in America, they never got scripts. They never got scripts for that. They had to write dialogue that matched mouth flaps that somehow was coherent with what all the visuals they were seeing. They never got official scripts, so they just did whatever they could, and that's why that show is as goofy as it is. Or goofier than probably the Japanese version is. And I'm going to be honest,
pretty goofy based on what I remember.
I'm planning on buying the Samurai Pizza Cats game, and I'm probably going to stream it because why not? unless it ends up being bad. So
anyway, we went really off on a tangent there.
Nothing new with us.
Nothing new with us. So do we want to move on?
Let's move on to your third one.
The third one. This was Little Nate's favorite cartoon as a child. Admittedly, I would say compared to Transformers and G.I. Joe, probably hasn't aged quite as well.
Mm-hmm.
But has an absolutely fantastic theme song.
Oh, before you do that, I do want to mention, I thought of one more thing for Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay,
it has
go for it.
the best theme song.
That theme song is epic.
Is so stinking. To me, it is still the theme song, and they should have just licensed it for all the other shows. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue.
Yeah, I was just saying, but
and don't get me wrong, Gotta Go Fast is also good, but
no, Drew.
Sonic,
We all know
Fastest Thing Alive is the best one. How they haven't got that in the movies, I don't know.
Well, Drew, I have you to thank for this because you brought this up in an episode. I'm like, I haven't heard that thing in years. I'm going to go find it and listen to it. Core memory unlocked. We all know the best Sonic the Hedgehog theme song is from Sonic Adventure by Crush 40.
Which one?
The
Sonic Adventure
one,
or Sonic Adventure 2?
Sonic Adventure is what I'm thinking.
Okay,
because that's
Open
the
Your
one
Heart.
I played the most.
Yeah, great. Open Your Heart's a great song. I think in more recent years, not because of the movie, but I think Live and Learn has gotten a bigger latch on to me than Open Your Heart is. But yeah, I get it. Oh, that is a great theme song.
Yeah, because that's a core memory for me because my brothers and I should say, bought a Dreamcast kind of when the Dreamcast was a little bit on the down and out. First game we got was Marvel vs. Capcom 2 because we had to.
Right. You're a big fighting game guy anyway.
And that was the only console with it. We're like,
yeah,
we need to play it at home. And this is the only place we can. One of the first games we got after that was Sonic Adventure. I played it a lot.
Yeah.
Possibly the only, well, for a long time anyway, the only good 3D Sonic game.
Once again, I will counteract that with saying Sonic Adventure 2 is
I didn't play that one as much. I know that
right.
one was good too, but once you get past Sonic Adventure,
yeah, once you get past that, it's
there was
up
not
and
a
down.
good 3D Sonic game for years.
It's up and down in terms of quality. There's a couple I want to go back to. I can tell you the one I don't is Sonic 06 because
that one is.
I did own
sir.
Sonic 06 for a short time.
Yeah, that
I didn't buy it new because I was at the time I didn't have the money for it when it came out, and then of course I saw the reviews and went, yeah, anyway. I'm glad I didn't go down that road. But then many years later, I'm at GameStop like you do, and they had a copy on for Xbox 360 that was used for like $10, and I said, "What the hell?" Let's see how bad this piece of garbage is. Let's see if we can riff tracks this sucker.
and explicit label.
And I'm going to tell you this right here, right now. The biggest problem that I ran into the game, bear in mind, I never finished it. I did not get to the scene. And I don't have to tell you what scene that is. You watch any video about Sonic 06 and you know what the scene is. So I never even got that far. But I can tell you the biggest problem with that game is load times. You will take 10 minutes to load a 3-second dialogue and then another 10 minutes to load the actual thing you're supposed to be doing. And it's like, why are the loading times this bad?
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry.
Anyway.
Back to yours with this other great theme song.
Yeah. So, favorite show, favorite cartoon as a child. Absolutely fantastic theme song, opening sequence. Animation, some would debate, if the animation beyond the intro is good. But the character designs were fantastic. The concepts were wild. I'm going to tell you right now, once I tell you the show, and then I tell you how I think the pitch for this would have gone. And I guarantee you that the executive who got this, his first response probably would have been something like, "Are you on cocaine? Because what is this? What you want me to greenlight a show about this fighting this and like it would have. I don't know how they got.
Considering a lot of the shows I remember from my childhood, there's a lot of times where you wonder what they were smoking.
Yeah.
If you really think about it,
would have been one of them. The show lasted, I think technically, I want to say, I don't know how many. I think I usually see it split into 2 seasons, which seems a little too short to me. It seems like it should be longer than that, more like 3 or 4. It was 120 episodes, which is wild.
The reason for that weird split is because cartoons seasons are weird at this time.
Yeah,
they don't follow the same structure that the regular television shows do.
Yeah, they are. I don't.
It's just whatever order they happen to order the however many episodes they decide to order at one time.
Yeah. Now I will admit there was a comic book. There's been several comic books based on this at the time. One at the time published by Marvel when it was airing. There have been a couple of attempts to reboot it, but it hasn't quite worked for different reasons. And so it hasn't had it was not quite the icon of like your Masters of the Universe or the other two shows I mentioned, but it was still pretty high up there, at least for a while. Got any guesses before I drop it?
You've described a lot of things that I haven't been able to edit to narrow it down. So go ahead.
Thundercats.
I was thinking Thundercats solely because you said at least the animation in the opening sequence was good. The rest of it, well,
but here's the thing. Despite that, this was animated in Japan, which is why it's got a bit of an anime flair.
It's definitely anime flavored.
Yeah, and for what I understand, the studio that made this show was technically a Rankin and Bass show.
Yeah, it's technically
really
Rankin Bass.
When I found out about that, I was like, Rankin and Bass?
Of all people,
Who made the schmaltzy stop motion Christmas specials?
That's what they're most known for, yes. But they did a couple other things.
Yeah,
they did do. They are the ones that paid Ralph Bakshi to make the Hobbits.
Yeah, I'm just saying that was weird for me to find out about that. The Japanese studio they commissioned to work on this, I forget what the name of it was, but a good chunk of them went on to found Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, because this company actually was a subsidiary of TMS, who Miyazaki worked for before he went to go, and all those animators worked for before they went and formed Studio Ghibli. In fact, in many ways, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, the one everyone calls the first Ghibli movie, is actually TMS. It's just Ghibli got the rights for it.
And technically a kaiju movie.
Technically, yeah, a lot of kaiju in that one.
Yeah, a lot of kaiju in that one. If we ever want a crossover, there you go.
Well, unfortunately, we did that in our first year during one of our first Miyazaki month episodes.
Do a rewind.
Well, it is very close. We'll have to, anyway. but we're not adding any more rewinds to the list till we get rid of the ones that actually need to rewind.
And actually, which reminds me, since I'm on the show, and I'm assuming this is going to go out next week.
Within a week.
Yeah. I'm going to drop what my Patreon pick is. So you will finally have the mystery revealed. And you will hate me for months.
Did you go through my entire list of episodes to make sure we haven't covered it? Or did you need to?
Oh, I know you haven't.
Lovely.
Unless you really want to break my brain
movie
and
month
tell me
is
that
starting over.
Like,
starting early.
Start over. But anyway,
except I do have an intro now just for bad movies instead of just bad movie month.
I know. So anyway, Thundercats, that was a big deal for me as a child. Like I said, I don't know how this show got pitched. I don't know how someone thought this was a good idea, because it's one of those things, like, if you just see it on paper, it sounds like a drug trip. But then when you actually see it done, you're like, this is one of the coolest things I have ever seen.
So, fun fact on this, I did not see Thundercats probably until like the late 90s. And it was when that me and my mom had traveled with my dad on one of my dad's business trips, like to the Metroplex, and we stayed in the hotel while he had to go to class. And that happened to get Cartoon Network. So Toonami would come around, and between watching my first animes, being Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z, Thundercats came on in the middle of it right now. And I think next to Gundam Wing too, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm still not 100% sure which Gundam show that was. I just knew I recognized the Zaku.
Probably Gundam Wing.
Probably Gundam Wing, because I think it's the first one that got it. It was the first one that
got brought over.
So
to
more
the
than
US,
likely it was Gundam Wing. But I remember watching that first episode of Thundercats I had ever watched, and Lion-O is talking to some, I thought human chick. I didn't know who she was. And she says, yes, we have this great old technology the ancients had called soap. I go, wait, what? Y'all don't have soap?
Yeah, the world building in this thing is wild. It is absolutely wild.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm just imagining. I'm trying to remember the name of the creator of the show. It was Fred something. I just imagining him coming into a studio executive and said, "I've got a show to pitch for you." Okay, what is it? It's a cartoon. All right. It's a kid's show. Okay. Action show. What?
Tobin Wolf was who created.
I know
Thundercats.
it was I know Wolf was in the name. I just couldn't remember exactly what. So he's leading with all these things like, oh, it's an action show. Okay, it is for kids. Okay, like going up. It's like, what is it about? Humanoid cat people fighting a super mummy with mutant minions.
Well, it makes about as much sense as He-Man.
No, I would have been like, what? Are you smoking something? What is this? And so it sounds absolutely insane. It's like one of those things where it's like, summarize a movie badly,
Yeah.
It's like this, and and technically it's accurate, but you're like, when you put it that way. And I feel like that's what the pitch for this would have sounded like. But then you actually watch it and you're just like, good Lord, this is absolutely insane. And it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen,
And one of the most 80s things you have ever seen.
Incredibly 80s at points.
It's so bad. Granted, it's been a while since I've watched the original show, but one of the first TAS series we covered was the 2011 one, the one that was actually an anime that also got canceled too early.
I don't consider that an anime, but
well, you know what I mean.
It's like
it's done in an anime style.
Well, this one kind of was too. I will tell you.
Either way, we watched that in like the 2000s, and it's like, man, you can tell this is based on 80s.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, and I might get some flack for saying this, but I would argue the 26 episodes of that exists. I've seen it. It took me a long time to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I would make the argument it's better than the original show. And the only reason I don't actually say like definitively it is the superior show is because it never got finished.
Yeah. Because
otherwise,
the toy sales
I like
were
at
horrible.
least the original show is a complete show. For the most part.
Yeah.
It's because that one never got finished. If it had been finished, it was like that's the definitive Thundercats. You can't compete with that. I love the original voice cast, but when you've got Terry McGinnis as Lion-O.
Yeah.
There's no competition. All right. But, like I said, the character designs are wild. Mumra is a genuinely horrifying cartoon supervillain. Okay. I love Megatron. I love Shredder. I love Cobra Commander. Mothra is horrifying. Okay, even Skeletor should be scary, but Skeletor is more funny than anything else.
It's
even
that
back
voice.
then,
I'll get you, He-Man.
I'll get you, He-Man.
And your little dog, too.
Yeah, basically. No, it's a cat. You fool. You bumbling boob. It's a cat.
I don't want to be good. I want to be evil.
It's even back then. He was played for laughs, even though he looks horrifying because he's literally a skeleton man in a cloak. He should be scary, but he's played more for laughs. Mumra is horrifying. All right, when you come in, I am a decrepit old mummy man in a red cloak, and then he starts performing sorcery, like demonic sorcery.
Yeah,
like I'm amazed my parents, at the height of the satanic panic, let me watch this show. When you've got him literally walking up, like he is completely unveiled evil. Like there is no question. All right. And he's literally will stand in his sanctum after coming out of a sarcophagus.
Yes.
And it's just like, ancient spirits of evil. And like, there's like, it very much implied like demonic spirits like floating around. Yeah. And he gets turned into this super buff like the bandage is coming. He's like this super buff super villain. I'm like, I just like how it's like Mumra is nightmare fuel. I'm sorry, Mumra is nightmare fuel. And so absolutely. And Mumra, there was a certain thing about Mumra that became a running joke in my family for years, and that was the fact that when he turns into the super mummy. And he's cackling and doing his shtick, and especially during the transformation sequence, and he looks really slobber-jawed. Like they put so much saliva on him. Anytime when we were kids growing up, if we would eat something like marshmallows, like roasted marshmallows, and it would get all gummed up on our mouth and everything, the joke was always, "You look like Mumra." And so it really had staying power. And yeah, so like I said, I look back on it now. I rewatched the show. I collected the DVDs. I rewatched / watched the show because I found out I didn't see every episode.
Yeah.
So I went through it, and admittedly, I don't think it's aged as well as the other two that I brought up here, or even a lot of its contemporaries. I just don't think it's aged as well.
That's always the problem you run into.
Yeah. But so much of it was it was so unique with its character designs and its world building, because there's a lot of things that it's left mysterious that I think some of the other material surrounding Thundercats have actually expanded on or confirmed things, like they're on a planet called Third Earth. And like, why is it Third Earth? And we have what look like the pyramids of Giza. That's where Mumra is. And so you're like, is this like Earth in the future? Is it Earth in the distant past? What's going on here?
Is this the third planet we've colonized and called Earth?
But it still has pyramids, and they introduce a lot of really wild characters that clearly inspired by Star Wars. They had like, the Rober Bills that were like robot Ewoks, and
they showed up in the quote unquote anime also.
But
I'm sorry, that's just how I think of it.
Yeah, but then you also had like the other kind of mainstay bad guys. They're called the mutants. So you had like, what was it, Sly? There was a lizard man, and then you had Vulture Man and Jackal Man, and and there was a Monkeyan, and all with very strong characterization. But what was really crazy is most of the cast was voiced by the same handful of people, which is wild.
Proof that it's a Rankin Bass production.
Yeah.
We save money by not hiring any actors.
Yeah.
But what few we need to actually do it.
Yeah. But then you had, Jaga, which is like the mentor character, was very much an Obi-Wan Kenobi sort of a character. He even dies in the first episode and then shows up as a ghost to mentor Lion-O. And the one main difference between this version and the subsequent versions is they do a weird, and I understand why they did it, because it's an interesting concept, even though it doesn't entirely make sense with how they execute it. And that is, when we first see Lion-O, he's a child. He's told that he's the Prince of Thundera. Yeah. And he's going to eventually get the sword, and that he's the chosen one and all that sort of stuff. Well, they put everybody into cryo sleep so they can make this long journey, because their planet explodes in the first episode. So it's got a little bit of a Superman thing going there.
You steal from the best.
Yeah. And then their ship crashes on Third Earth. And when they wake up, everybody else is fine. But then they find out that the pod that Lion-O was in was damaged, and he actually aged into adulthood. So he's physically an adult, but he still has more of the mind of a child. Yeah. And that's why all the other characters are like, okay, we need to help you grow up, because you didn't actually get to do that. So we're going to help you with that, because you're the prince of the Thundercats. And we are establishing a new colony, basically, here on Third Earth. So it's like everybody there is trying to help him grow up. Which is interesting. They've dropped that in the subsequent versions. Like the 2011 one, he's just a young man. He's a young man already. And they don't bother with any of that. They
don't have Mum-Ra attack until he's like right before his coronation or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Like, one of the things I love about the 2011 show is it takes a lot of the wilder, kind of inconsistent bits of lore from the original 80s show, and it basically just streamlines it. Yeah. So that it makes more sense. Thundera is a city on Third Earth. So they just take, instead of it being two separate planets, it's like, no, it's a city.
A consolidation of the wild and wacky lore.
Yeah, they consolidate a lot of it.
Except Mum-Ra is still from another planet.
He is, and
And
if I have one major criticism with the 2011 show that I definitely give the original show over that one, I don't like the guy who voices Mumra in the 2011 show. The original one sounds way more intimidating.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I said, so many wild, crazy concepts. And to be honest, when I think back on this, those 3 cartoons were pillars of my very young childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that explains so much about me. Pulpy military action, high sci-fi robot wars, and whatever the heck Thundercats is.
So my third one, I actually debated between 3 different shows as to which one was going to take this spot. And honestly, I'm surprised I made the debate at all because the answer was obvious. But, in the 90s, and Grant, I think technically, I need to look up the dates, but I know the original show definitely came out while I was still 10 years old, that this is based off of. It was a sketch comedy show that aired on Fox Kids originally before Kids WB came around, and they moved over there. And then they split off the actual show I'm talking about from the sketch comedy show. And it's a little bit of Orson Welles and a little bit of The Secret of Nim. But comedic.
I'm sure as soon as you say it, I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, that.
It's the story of 2 genetically enhanced lab mice trying to take over the world. Pinky and the Brain.
Classic.
Here's the thing. It started on Animaniacs. And a lot of my memories, I'll admit, are from the Animaniacs era. But when I was trying to decide, because Animaniacs was actually the show I was debating doing as a part of this. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I watched Animaniacs because I wanted to watch Pinky and the Brain. If we're being perfectly honest, because to me, that was the funniest part of the show.
I was going to say, I'm going to be honest with you, Pinky and the Brain was the best part of the show.
It was the best part of the show. There's a reason why when Hulu made that horrible remake of Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain was the only one of the quote-unquote side characters that got to make a return in that first season. The rest of that show is garbage, by the way. And even the Pinky and the Brain segments aren't that good. But the original the original Pinky and the Brain segments plus the actual standalone Steven Spielberg presents Pinky and the Brain is such classic fun. I am still of the opinion that, the theme song says one is a genius and the other's insane. I am of the opinion Pinky's the genius and it's the brain who's insane, because the definition of insanity is to continue doing the same thing and expecting it to succeed. And the brain never succeeded. I take that back. He did succeed one Christmas, but the Christmas got to his heart, and he used his plan to wish everyone a Merry Christmas instead of taking over the world, because he did technically beat Santa Claus in that episode. But it was just such a good show. It affected my vocabulary for a long time. I think so, Brain. So here's the thing. Y'all have probably heard my quote unquote fake curse words that I use on the show because I don't like to cuss. But there are times when you want to use
the guy who technically dropped a mild profanity in this episode.
Whatever. Anyway. I think that was before it, but anyway. I don't even remember what I said now.
You dropped a HE double hockey stick.
Oh, that's not a cuss word.
Oh, whatever.
That's either way. But I will tell you that my first quote unquote fake curse words were pinkyisms. I said narf and point and zoinks to take the place of words I wanted to say, but didn't want to get my butt whooped because that's how it goes.
I had a similar experience, but with the fake profanities on Beast Wars.
Fair enough.
Finding myself saying those, even though they really made no sense. Mm-hmm.
But it was just, that show was just so funny. to watch.
It's such a brilliant
It's
concept
brilliant.
too.
It's a simple
two
setup.
lab mice who want to take over the world.
Right.
That's funny enough, but then when
And-
you actually get the two characters where one is a super genius because he's a lab rat,
Right.
and the other one is his bumbling sidekick
Mm-hmm.
who inadvertently foils all of his plans to take over the world.
And it's such a simple concept, and yet every episode is unique. There's not a repeat of like any plan Brain actually does. But one of my favorite episodes of this is one where you actually see the whole thing from Pinky's point of view. So every time Pinky seems to, zone out and not catch what Brain's saying while he's going off on some long tangent, you see what Pinky's actually seeing, and it's usually Brain turning into a hippopotamus in his mind for some reason. And I remember how the end of it, every episode ends with, "Gee, Brain, what are we going to do tomorrow night?" "The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world." Every episode ends that way. That episode's like, "Gee, Brain, what are we going to do tomorrow night?" "The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Blah, 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 blah." Because he just quit listening. That was a good episode. The first full 30-minute episode where they're pretty much doing the hunt for Red October is hilarious. The segments that are from Animaniacs, which are a little bit cheaper animated, because I think it was technically a different studio on some of those. They still work, but it's the fact that they also still somehow fit into the Animaniacs universe, I think, is crazy. It's just such a good show, and let's be honest, they're also the best thing about the Animaniacs movie Wacko's Wish. If you've never watched that, go watch that. It's a great show, and it actually feels like that's the great thing about that movie is it feels like it ends both shows. Because they get Pinky and the Brain gets their own stuff that was introduced in Pinky and the Brain, like Pinky's horse girlfriend, which is a thing. Farfig Newton, that was the name of the horse, is the main, helps them throughout the whole episode, because technically Dr. Scratch and Sniff, that's his horse in the movie for some reason. And of course Pinky's going, "Oh, I love you, Farfig Newton." It's like, "Rob Paulson, you crazy jerk, you." Yeah, Rob, this is the first time I'd ever heard anyone do an Orson Welles voice with Maurice LaMarche. Maurice LaMarche is still one of my favorite voice actors, but you can tell, but he doesn't have that many voices. And unfortunately, Orson Welles is one of the ones that seems to pop up the most when you're watching other shows. Because all of a sudden you're watching going, "That's the Brain. What's the Brain doing in this show?" It's just so... It's such a simple concept, and it's done to comedic perfection. One of my other favorite episodes is the one where Brain is going to try to take over the world via country music. And the thing is I grew up in this era of country music. I listened to this era of country music. It's what was playing in my parents' car anytime we went anywhere. So, and that's where actually a line I copy, an audio clip I use on the show comes from. It's from that episode.
"He ain't half bad. Ain't half good either."
And that's right before Brain turns his thing on and hypnotizes all the country music lovers to go out and buy his albums. And he gets all the way to the Grand Ole Opry, and they actually do say the Grand Ole Opry. They don't try to use some other word for it, even though the Ryman and the Gaylord people technically own that name. And he loses at the last minute because that's how the show works. And it was just so much fun. It's a fun comedic show. And the comedies were just as much a cartoon influence on me at the time as the action shows were, even though the action shows tend to stick in my mind more because cool action, fun stuff. And then you got, "Gee, Brain, what are we going to do tomorrow night? Pinky, are you pondering what I'm pondering?" "I think so, Brain. But how can we get all that cheese in Uncle Chuck's trousers?" I'm like, "What?" Pinky, where's this coming from?
I don't know how the writers came up with some other surreal non sequitur,
Which always
Pinky
somehow
to say in every episode,
and it somehow made sense. Not much.
It's like,
but you can kind of see how Pinky's brain got there.
I swear they must have just like every time they would have a meeting for a new season, they probably had to block out at least an hour.
Yeah,
just to brainstorm
that joke,
surreal non sequiturs for Pinky to say.
Yeah. I mean, we've even done. Me and Jacob did that on your show when we got.
I was to say, yeah,
when we had to run away from the ghost girl and the in the fox.
When we did the
kitsune.
Yeah, the kitsune. When we did that was a little tie-in drama segment for when I had you on for. I believe it was for Monster Wars.
I think it was Monster Wars.
It was for Monster Wars.
Yeah. And what's funny on that episode is we're recording that like after we recorded a cellcast. Me and Jake recorded our lines then, and Jacob did not catch that was a Pinky in the Brain reference in the script.
And I intentionally put that in there because I knew you guys loved the show, and I don't think that was not a copy. I think I actually did it. Is it? I don't remember if that's copied or if I actually came up with something that sounded like it.
I don't know. I didn't Google it, and
I was racking my brain hard. It was hard to come up with a Pinkyism like that.
But I remember Jacob was wanting to say, okay, they were doing a plan. That means I need to do Fred from Scooby. He goes, no, don't. That's not the joke here. The joke, if you can't, I said, are you pondering what I'm pondering? This is Pinky in the Brain. I need you to be Pinky because I'm apparently the brain. I don't feel like the brain half the time.
I'm sorry.
I get it.
Jacob
has
the
Pinky energy
of this duo. I'm sorry.
No, I get it. Jacob has Pinky energy. I have brain energy. I just don't consider myself a genius like Brain is supposed to be.
No, I get it, but I'm just saying. He's Pinky because some of the things that Jacob. I listen to the uncut episodes. I know the weird things that Jacob says that don't make the final cuts, people.
Well, you say don't make the final cuts. I do very little editing to the show. So some of that does make itself through, and I'm sitting there going, Jacob, where'd you get that from? I didn't follow your train of thought on that one. But yeah, Pinky,
we love you, Jacob, but your brain goes places.
It's part of the show. That's just how he is, and that his ADD just makes him go squirrel.
Yeah,
which the fact that we haven't redone that movie yet is crazy. Because we still haven't done Up yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had to think for a second because I'm like, wait, hyperactive. There's several movies with hyperactive.
A hyperactive dog that says squirrel. Yeah, we haven't done that one yet.
My brain went to there's several movies with hyperactive squirrels, but
yeah, we haven't done any of the Ice Age movies yet either, so no scrap.
Ice Age, Hoodwinked.
Yeah, we haven't done Hoodwinked yet. Hoodwinked, the reason I haven't put Hoodwinked on there, I'll admit, is because I'm not sure if it's a good movie or a bad movie, and so I don't know which area to put it in.
I think it's good. I don't remember.
It's well written, but it's poorly animated.
If I saw the sequel, I didn't like the sequel very much.
I didn't see the sequel. I remember seeing.
The funny thing was the sequel had better animation because it
had money.
It had money, but it wasn't as good. That's the thing. It was basically the first one was really clever.
Yeah.
Despite its animation limitations, it was basically the brainchild of a guy in college, and he got the thing made.
Yeah, because it's literally an independent film that one of the big major animation studios picked up, and it's like that's why it has no money.
Yeah,
no one really put it out.
It was still really clever. That's the thing. That's the thing. If you can get past the sort of cheap animation, it's really clever.
Right. I just hadn't figured out where to put it in there, or it just hadn't occurred to me when I'm making the list out. But yeah.
Well, I would argue it's not bad movie month material.
No, it's probably not. Jacob in the chat, who has moved over to his Twitch name, says it's called ADHD Brain. You should try it sometime. Pinky? Really? Yes, Jacob, you're Pinky.
I'm sorry, dude.
You have that kind of energy.
I'm sorry. It's just I have had people accuse me of having ADHD, and then I'm like, do you know my friend Jacob? Watch Jacob on the Cellcast and then come back and talk to me.
We do love you, man. If you didn't have that kind of energy, we would be missing something. Missing something
You're talking
good.
to Jacob, right?
Yes, to Jacob.
Okay. I'm just,
Sorry.
like,
I was anyway.
Anyway.
But yeah, getting back to the point, as you can probably tell that much like you, my three choices definitely make sense when you think about me, because Sonic the Hedgehog, Darkwing, and Pinky and the Brain, a comedy, an action comedy, and 90s extremism.
I was gonna say, yeah.
It's like, that's kind of me.
Yeah, basically.
It's like, because I am definitely a 90s kid. That's the era I grew up in. That's just where I sit, and you can't get more 90s than that era Sonic the Hedgehog.
No, you can't. You can't.
Which is why I get so excited when we have these Sonic the Hedgehog movies, and I'm going, they're playing Live and Learn.
Yeah. So do we kind of want to mention the, kind of the backups, the honorable mentions in case we ever do a part 2 to this, or?
Let's hold off and we'll maybe do the part 2 later, because I think we could probably come back to this topic at a later date. I could probably come back to this topic with many different people and come up with some crazy lists. But yeah, for now,
I'll tell you off the air at the very least.
Oh yeah, we could definitely talk let's face it, we will be talking off the air probably till midnight.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Right. But yeah, like I said, I think this really. Another reason I should mention this. Forgot to mention this. Another reason why I think I glommed onto Thundercats.
Why?
It's because Lion-O, specifically his voice actor, reminded me of something else that I discovered and loved as a child around the same time, even though they're not the same people.
Mm-hmm.
But for some odd reason, I'm going to look up his actual name just to confirm.
Okay.
But
and after this, I got to do something I technically should have done earlier in the episode, but I'll do it now.
You failed.
But admittedly, we're on like very little outline here, so I got to throw this in there, but I haven't yet.
Oh, here he is. Okay, so Larry Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I said that right. Larry Kenny. For some odd reason, little Nate thought Larry Kenny sounded like William Shatner.
I can kind of see that, because he has a very Shatner-esque delivery.
Yeah. For some odd reason, I had it in my head. I don't know if I necessarily thought that was William Shatner, but I kept thinking, he sounds like Captain Kirk.
Fair enough.
So I think that was another reason I glommed onto it, because I loved Star Trek even as a very small child at this point.
Well, I grew up on Next Generation, so
yeah. So I think that was another reason why, kind of, relating back to something else I loved. So yeah, definitely, like I said, has not aged as well as the others, but in fact, to be honest, the ones that you picked probably have aged better than most of mine.
Only because the 90s era stuff, I think, had a little bit more investment in it, and they weren't trying to do as much limited animation at the time, which admittedly limited animation's an art in and of itself compared to even the straight cell animation of most of the stuff I mentioned.
Yeah.
But all right, before we go on any farther, I do need to actually do our Culture Box shout out stuff.
Yeah.
So let me do that real quick.
This podcast is a proud member of Culture Box. Whether you enjoy geeky reviews, comedy, or original fiction, you can open up the Culture Box and find something excellent for your soul. Point your web browser to culturebox.media.
This week, we suggest checking out The Rushmore Show, since we kind of did rankings. The Rushmore Show is the place for ranking the ultimate top 4 in sports, video games, nostalgia, movies, and so much more. Each week, Andy and Kirk spark engaging discussions and friendly debates, making The Rushmore Show your compass in the realm of pop culture rankings. You can find more on their YouTube channel, The Rushmore Show, where it's all about your top 4 and nothing more. The Cellcast would also like to thank the following patrons: Ashley and Francisco Ruiz, or the Ruiz family as it technically is listed.
Roy!
PaulJPowers.com, the Monster Island Film Vault. Oh, you're right there. And Edwin Gonzalez is back once again. Welcome back. If you would like to have your name shouted out on the show, some special art from Jacob, or uncut episodes, you can donate to us for $5. Or for $5 more, you can do what Nathan has threatened to do and make us review a movie against our will. Within reason.
I was waiting for you to cue the soundbite.
Well, I still need to shorten the soundbite. But within reason.
Against my will. It's against my will. This is totally against my will. There, if I could record one for you.
I just need to go back in and edit it because it's too long. But yeah, you can donate to us on Patreon. Also, go check out our Redbubble store for merch. And go check out Jacob's Patreon, Like an Artist 82, for his stuff. I know he is probably going to get back to doing some art streams because he was doing that for a while, but then life gets in the way, as it does. So go do that. And also, Tuesday nights, I do some game streaming. Right now, I am technically taking a short break from Kingdom Hearts because, well, A, life gets in the way, and B, I needed a break. So I'll go back to that eventually once I get some actual Untangling Kingdom Hearts episodes edited and released, because I'm behind on that too.
You can only handle so much convoluted lore at once.
And the crazy part is I'm not to the convolutions yet. We haven't gotten to the big knot that is coming. I'm still in like, oh, we're here in Aladdin's world, fighting, slapping a bird in the sky because the movie happened. Anyway. So, we're at the end of the episode. Technically, which is why I said I should have done that earlier. But I've got to do the meme because you're here. Nathan,
don't you want me to tell you what my Patreon pick is?
Oh yes, actually, go ahead and do that first,
the Patreon pick?
Because that's technically right next to all that stuff I just mentioned.
Well,
what are you torturing us with?
Oh, sir, if you thought the Mighty Kong was bad,
mm-hmm.
This thing is notorious. It's technically a hybrid. Barely, but it's a hybrid. I'm going to make you pay dearly for those Titanic movies. I know, I get it. You can veto it, but I'm going to fight that veto. I'm going to fight that veto hard.
We have only ever vetoed one film, and it was I'll even say it was Bobo's pick, and I asked him to pick something else, and he picked Mad Balls. Because the thing he gave us was a thing, and and the only copy we could find was very poorly recorded. But apparently that's the only version of it that existed. So
yeah. Oh, this is a very well-known piece of media, very notorious. Technically, it has been buried. Now, I said it's hybrid, but it's only barely hybrid. I think the animated segments have technically been released officially, but they want everyone to forget about everything else.
I know what you're bringing up because I talked about it on your show.
It's technically Christmas.
We're celebrating Life Day.
Yes, the Star Wars Holiday Special, punks.
Okay,
eat it.
I will allow this.
No. I'm not done.
I have seen the film.
I get it.
I have seen it because you have to. If you're into Star Wars, if you're a Star Wars nerd, you have to watch it once.
Yes.
But I'm going to warn you.
But
I'm probably watching the Riff Tracks version because I
just about to
do own that.
Here's my qualification. I, Nate Marchand, am not completely without mercy. You get the Riff Tracks version.
Well, that's a good thing because I do technically already own it. I just have to re-download it.
Well, there you go. So there you go. Riff Tracks.
We get the
Star Wars Holiday Special uncut, so you can get the animated segment. So it technically qualifies for the show.
Well, I would have counted it anyway because technically Chewbacca could be considered suitmation.
Yes, but I'm just saying.
Hey, let's face it, there's a lot of Wookiee in that thing.
And the animated portions are technically the best part.
Yes, it's why they've released it separately on multiple locations. It's the only part of it that Lucasfilm will acknowledge it still exists outside of saying it's never happening.
And first appearance of Boba Fett.
Yes.
That's another reason why it's important.
Oh, my word. This is going to be
payback.
Fun.
Payback.
Actually, no, because it's not that crazy. It's crazy. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of untranslated Wookiee dialogue in this that we're going to have to sit through.
There's also some segments in this thing that I'm like, clearly George Lucas was not involved in this because one, this doesn't make sense. Two, this is borderline not family friendly.
Are we talking about the Jefferson Starship music video? Are we talking about the weird dance thing that's happening on the chessboard?
The weird dance thing with that Grandpa Wookiee is watching.
One of what's his
Grandpa
name?
Baca.
What is that actor that's in like half of the thing? Plays half the sketch characters.
I don't remember.
But the one where he's playing the cook and she's going stir whip, 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 stir. It's like, let's not. Harvey Korman, thank you, Bobo. Now, Grant, the part with B. Arthur in the in the can scene is actually pretty good.
It's not bad. The Wookiee stuff is what kills it. But
the Wookiee stuff's going to be what kills us.
Jacob will not get through the Wookiee stuff. I will admit, one of my all-time favorite nostalgia critic lines is from his review of that. And it's when the Imperial officer bursts into the Chewbacca household when he's not there. Mm-hmm. And you hear the critic come on doing a bad German accent, and he says, "We hear you are hiding Jewish evox."
So I did not watch the special, the holiday special until about 5 years ago, because COVID does things to a man. But I did see one scene from the riff tracks of this before that point during the MST3K reunion show. If you've not seen that one, and they show this montage of different jokes throughout that they've done, and the one they have from the holiday special is, wow, that's not the stupidest thing I've seen today.
But yes.
And it's Harvey Korman.
Let me tell you, Jimmy's coming in on that one.
Oh, of course.
He's got opinions. Yeah. He's got so many opinions.
We won't be able to get him to shut up.
Jimmy, my intrepid producer on MIFV, a notorious prequel hater. This is like the one thing Star Wars he hates even more, although I think he refuses to watch any of the Disney Plus stuff on principle. But
hey, some of the Disney Plus stuff is good.
Oh my.
But yeah. You know what? Well played.
Now, I've got a list of things that would make for good crossovers between our shows for future Patreon picks,
right.
But I'm going to save those for later because I'm like, do I really want to get into this on my show, or can I save it for Cellcast?
Yeah,
there's a few.
I'm sure some of those things I'll come across too every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. In fact, we're going to be on your show coming up.
Yes,
like within the next year. I don't know exactly when that release schedule looks like. I know we're recording it a lot sooner than that.
I was going to say my goal is for us to record it in the next couple of weeks, and I will do my darndest to have the episode out in July. That is my goal.
Gotcha.
And you guys will be my season 5 premiere. We will be launching the Ultra Journey.
Yes, with a Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
They made an Ultraman movie. It was here's the thing that's wild about it. It went straight to video, which is kind of sad because if you watch the movie, it's absolutely beautiful. It can be, yes, right. That's the Japanese Blu-ray.
Yes.
The new American
I spent too
Blu-ray,
much money on this.
Yeah, the new American Blu-ray just got announced, and people are confused about it because it looks like it has 2 English voice tracks.
Well, we got 2 English dubs.
Yeah, but no one's really sure because it says new English dub, which I think is a weird way to put it because it was an American production.
And I'm still
originally
wondering,
made in
why
English.
is there a new
Yeah,
English dub? What
but
was
it-
wrong
but then
with the
you-
old one, especially since it was
think
the original?
I think it's a rights issue.
Probably, but at the same
probably
time,
don't wanna pay 'em.
it sounds like it maybe have the new, the old one on it too.
I
but-
don't know. It's confusing. I'm trying to find out from what my friend Jeff Gomez at Ultraman
Right.
Connection if it's going to have both or not. But
It should have. both.
regardless, I've got the Japanese Blu-ray just in case.
Same.
But yeah, so you're going to be launching the Ultra Journey where I'm going through Ultraman movies. What's interesting about that is that even though it went straight to video, because it was supposed to be a pilot for a TV show that never got made.
What little I watched, because I was curious, because this is my first Japanese Blu-ray. I plugged it in just to see, okay, how does this work? How do I get to where I could actually listen to what's going on this thing? And I learned how to use the Google Translate app doing this too.
But it's actually not that hard.
It's not that hard. It's just
it's pretty simple.
Their logic in creating Blu-ray menus is different than ours.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, yeah, you could tell this is a pilot for a television show,
Yeah, but here's the thing that's wild about it.
but it's still animated very well.
Yeah, that was not only the first American produced, because there are others, the first American produced Ultraman production. It's also technically, even though it went straight to video, it's supposed to be the pilot for a show, it is technically the first completely original Ultraman movie. There were several compilation films
Right.
before this, and a couple years before this, Subaraya made an Ultraman movie called Ultraman Story that was like, I think like half to 2/3 stock footage, and then the rest of it was new. So it doesn't quite count. And that one hasn't been released by Mill Creek yet. So I decided to start here because it's completely original.
Right.
So it's
And plus, it's an
fascin-
excuse to have us on. So
and it's an excuse to have you guys on. And our friend Dallas will be tickled to death to know that one of the several monsters, kaiju, that show up in that thing is from Louisiana. So make of that what you will. So yeah, you guys will be kicking off
That'll be
season
interesting.
5. Yeah, you guys will be kicking off season 5 with me, doing that, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be exciting. Season 5 is going to be an exciting season. You guys might even be coming back to do another story segment because we came up with a funny idea after a recording. How yet another way we can exploit your co-host. If he's not
we
getting
still need to work
unwanted
on that. I still need to.
I was to say, if he's not getting
let-
unwanted attention from a Korean ghost girl,
The fun fact is I actually still have to work on some lore segments for my show before we get to that point.
yeah,
Because, yeah, folks, there may be story involved on our show more than just what we've got right now. I just got to actually write it.
yeah. So it might be something we'll have to plan a little bit. I think I know how to fit it in on my show, but yeah, it's going to require a little bit of planning. But it'll be wild to say the least. It'll be a little bit wild. So I'm really looking forward to that. So something to look forward to. So is now the shameless self promotion?
Yes. Well, we've kind of already started, but
yeah.
go ahead and do your shameless self promotion.
I am a meme. Anyway, so obviously,
I will admit to you, Nathan, I don't say it that way when it's anybody else.
I know. But anyway, so we've mentioned the Film Vault, so go check that out, especially if you're a fan of kaiju. I am wrapping up the 4th season, which has been international kaiju movies. So kaiju movies made anywhere but America and Japan, because I do a lot of Japanese movies, and I've done a season dedicated to American films. The next couple, the latest one is Konga, which is a 1961 British film that is sort of a Kong knockoff, but not really a Kong knockoff. But if you ever had to see Alfred Pennyworth be an evil mad scientist in control of who mind controls a gorilla to murder his enemies, Konga is the movie for you.
I always knew Alfred had a sinister side to him.
Yeah, well, Michael Goff. There you go.
That's the forgive me.
The Burton movies.
But yeah, the Burton that's the only consistent actor through that era of Batman.
Yeah. So there's that, and the next couple that'll be doing as part of that main series will be Gorgo, which is basically like the Brits trying to make Godzilla.
Fair.
And it's actually pretty good, I gotta say. And then Gareth Edwards' Monsters, which was an independent film technically. It's a British film set in Mexico, and it was because he made that he got to direct Godzilla. And later Star Wars, if you care, but he directed Rogue One.
Hey, I still say Rogue One is the best of the Disney films, so
arguably.
I don't know. And it might actually beat out for me many of the prequels. But
yeah.
That's neither here nor there.
So there's that, and then check out my other show, Henshin Power V3, where three friends have 3 minutes to talk about tokusatsu. We have unfortunately fallen behind because Christopher Reiner, my co-host, bless his heart, to kind of steal a Texasism from you, because I know that's popular.
Not a Texasism, that's a Southernism.
I know, but when I looked up stuff, because I had a Texan character on the show for a while, so I was looking up Texasisms, and it listed bless your heart as a Texasism. Yeah,
that means you're an idiot.
But he decided to do most of the editing on the show, and he has been struggling hard.
Editing is a different beast.
Yeah, he has been struggling with an episode because we had problems with that recording, and he's been fighting with it for a long time. So we've kind of been on unintentional hiatus.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I'm like, dude, we need to get this done so we get those episodes out, get back our momentum, and just start writing it, because we're technically covering an animated series when we start recording again, which will be the Guyver animes. Mm-hmm. So, I kind of want to get those done, and I want to know what we're covering next season. I know what I'm picking, and I know what our guest pick is going to be, because we're going to do a guest series.
Right.
And we've all agreed on to who the guest is going to be and what show that's going to be. But I want to know what else we're covering. So, but anyway, so give that a listen if you enjoy tokusatsu, particularly Henshin Hero television. The gimmick is that we'll go through about 5 to 10 episodes of TV per podcast episode, but we can only talk about each episode for 3 minutes, just like Ultraman.
Mm-hmm. And what I have listened to has been very good.
Yeah, thank you. We've come a long way.
Yes,
because Jake Hambrick has been on the show with you, with you guys, and
he was on our Ultraman.
Yes, actually, he's
Made
been on
in
twice.
Tokyo. I can't remember the actual subtitle of that movie.
No, it's just Ultraman Rising. He was just an Ultraman Rising. He was supposed to be on for the Dragon Ball Z episode, but he didn't make it.
Right, Dragon Ball Super Broly.
Dragon Ball Super, yeah. So, but anyway, they were both very inexperienced as podcasters, and I want to say I think both of them have come a long way since we started HPV3, and I'm proud of them for that. So give that a listen.
There's nothing so awkward as a podcaster's first year.
Yeah,
that's why we're redoing most of our reviews from that time period.
Well, that's why I started a whole other show, and started, even though I didn't want to, because the listeners were like, "Can you just do it again, so we don't have to listen to your old show?" And then things happen with my ex co-host where I'm like, "Screw it, I'm just going to do it again."
There you go.
Because Godzilla is good for business.
Indeed.
Indeed. So go listen to that and check out my author website, nathanjsmarchand.com. I'm actually planning on releasing a new book later this year, try to get back on track with that, because I love writing books and I need to get back into the habit of releasing a new book, at least one new book every year. So I'll be putting out a short story collection with a bunch of other unpublished short stories that I just want to have out there so I don't have to think about them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Get them out into the world.
Fair.
It'd be similar to the first volume of short stories I did, except most of these will not be speculative fiction. That'll be the one major difference. Well, they usually deal with nerdy stuff anyway. Like the flagship story is going to be about a guy who, just finished working right before Christmas, not having the happiest of times, and he stumbles across a collectible Superman cape in a dumpster, and he spends the entire night trying to return it to its owner. And shenanigans ensue.
Well, there you go.
So there you go. Yeah. So that's the long and short of it. There's a lot of other things I could get into, but that's the major thing. Also, and I'll mention this right now, there are some cons that I plan on attending just as an attendee. However, if you would like to meet me at a convention where I am part of the programming, come to G-Fest in Chicago in mid-July. I will be on several panels while I'm there, and also doing a writer's seminar, a mini writer's seminar while I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
And come to Gen Con in Indianapolis in early August. I will be in their vendor hall in Authors Avenue selling my books. So if you want to come enjoy the quote-unquote 4 best days of gaming and get an autographed copy of one of my books, or all of them, come buy them all. I don't care. Come see me at Gen Con.
There you go. So, next week's episode, hopefully we'll be able to get back to this depending on how the scheduling goes. You know how, because we're up in the air at the moment, but hopefully our next episode is going to actually be our review of Thunderbirds Argo, along with the
Cats. Not Thundercats.
Not Thundercats, Thunderbirds.
The Thundercats eat the Thunderbirds.
It'd be interesting if they could do that in those rockets.
Yeah, let's see if they can. Also, I just really quick go listen.
Did I say Thundercats?
No, you said Thunderbirds. I
Okay,
threw in Thundercats
sorry.
to be funny. Also, I just want to mention I'm one of the higher ups and actors for Scythering Productions.
Right.
So go listen to their audio dramas.
Anyway, we should be doing Thunderbirds or Go next week, along with the Batman animated series episodes, The Strange Case of Bruce Wayne, and If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich? Those are the next 2 episodes on that. Which, yes, that is the Riddler first Riddler episode.
Riddler's so good in that show.
Yes. And this is actually the one I had the most memories of as a kid. I noted, and
I was introduced to so many Batman villains through that show.
So join us hopefully next week for that. If something else comes up, I will let y'all know. But in the meantime, this has been Drew.
This has been Nate.
And we'll catch you in the next frame.
To follow Jacob and Drew's individual internet exploits, check out the Linktree links in the show notes. You can email us at thecellcastpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter or X at @cast_cell. Follow our Facebook page, The Cellcast Podcast, and join our Facebook group, The Cell Nation, our YouTube channel, Cellcast, and our Rumble channel, The Cellcast Gaming. You can join us every Friday night at 7 p.m. Central for our live recordings of our episodes on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. You can also join Drew on those same streaming channels on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Central for gaming streams. You can listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else fine podcasts can be downloaded from. Please rate and review us where you found us. Our theme song is Drop and Roll by Silent Partner. Our bad movie theme is It's Party Time by Gregory Snegoff, with additional audio from the film Titanic: The Legend Goes On, and remember, that's Cell with a single L.
I am absolutely horrified that I've been so traumatized by Titanic: The Legend Goes On. I'm going to do this in my sleep.
The fun part is you didn't actually watch that one.
I didn't. That's how traumatized I am.
Or I guess I should say, if a podcaster makes you watch a bad Titanic movie, that's no good. That's what Sonic says.
You should do that. You should like make fake PSAs to tag at the end of some of the episodes.
And knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe!